Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of the United States of a Movie podcast. We're the podcast that makes a Monday a fun day as we get together, we talk movies, but we also have a purpose for talking movies because we're the podcast that's trying to find one movie to define each state in the United States. Now we have already finished our first season. We did a road trip around all 50 states. How you do a road trip to Hawaii or Alaska, I don't know. However, now we're doing a series of specials that were connected to movies that we brought up during the first season that made us just want to get together and find a reason to chat about it. So this week, we are doing the United States of Space. My name is Oli Petchgru. I love movies. I hosted movie shows back in Asia. And fortunately, I found two friends who love movies just as much, if not more than me. So why don't we welcome them back to the show? First of all, looking like he's at Warp Factor 9, sitting in the front of his very own starship, Will Hirsch, looking very, very Jonathan Frakes right now. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Of all the podcasts I have listened to, this one is the most human.
Favorite part of the movie for me. Love that part. Gets me every time. We're going to get to that one. Welcome back, Will. But Ryan has such a confused look on his face because Will and I have come out of the gate talking about Star Trek. Ryan's regretting every choice he's made in his entire life, buddy. Welcome back to the show. I'm sorry.
There's two things I want to get off my chest here. Finally, you guys have convinced me to watch my very first and very last Star Trek movie.
Oh no, we're to go to a state later.
Dude, you said you were trying to get two things off your chest. I was assuming you were talking about Khan's titties.
Oh man.
Dude,
I was there. And the other thing was, we were talking about like once we picked these movies all week throughout the text thread, I was like, I had this air of excitement in me, you guys. Like I was reading through this and I was like, oh my God, you picked this movie, The Wraith of Khan. There's another Wraith movie. Come to find out, it's not that at all. And you fuckers lied to me. And I had to watch this, the third installment in a Star Trek. And
it's the second installment.
The second installment.
We'll
get to the third.
Why did I think this was the third one?
It's literally called Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
I thought it was the third. Jesus Christ! For some reason, thought it was the third. The third one's the quest for
the search for Spock.
Search for Spark.
And then the fourth one is that whales are the best. We love whales.
That's the I have admittedly, like we talked about, I had seen the Undiscovered Country.
So you saw Star Trek 6,
the sixth,
which is a good one. I saw that one in theaters.
It made me think, like watching this one, and we'll get into it. But William Shatner is like markedly old in this, so much so that he needs glasses to see things. But they went ahead and made 4 more where he's progressively older. Okay.
Yep. Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's 100%. Still plowing alien ass.
Hey man, he also turns up in Generations. He connected with the next generation, and
we don't need to do that.
Spock connected in the Kelvin timeline. It's Ryan, where are you going? Ryan, come back. Okay.
Is there? Am I missing?
We'll get to all of them. Don't you worry.
There's a film where they cross over with like Patrick Stewart, and is there like a greatest hits?
Generations.
That's Generations.
Yeah,
and that was a film, not a show.
That was a film.
There's the Next Generation show, and then Star Trek Like I said, I'll find a way to work it into all our episodes.
This is somehow less easy to understand than the entirety of Interstellar. I totally get fucking wormholes and.
Well, as astute listeners / viewers may have figured out that one of the movies that we brought to the table, and considering that Will is sitting on the deck of a starship right now, Will brought Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Honestly, Will and I both wanted to make Ryan watch this. The thing is, it's a fucking banger of a movie. I'm sorry. Oh, Ryan, you liked that movie. You liked this movie, and I know you did. This is a good movie.
I mean, it honestly, we'll get into it if you want to introduce the other films. That's fine. We can talk about this one first. That way, we can do it 2 ways. We can get this one out of the way first, or we can do the 2 actual movies, and I can just fucking leave, and then you two can suck each other's dicks over this fucking movie.
Beam me up, Will. Okay,
Let's
look,
get
we'll
to
come
it.
back to it. We'll come back to it because I'm definitely going to want to talk about it because I think it actually might be my favorite one of the three that we did this particular week. But Ryan, okay, sort of Ryan, we went space, we went sort of like Star Trek, we're going hyper hour. What was the your response to this
I
onslaught
mean,
of Star Trek?
because we talked about it. I'm sure we'll get into this like with the also rants, but I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but space is pretty fucking vast. Like, there's a lot of shit out there. We talked about so many movies going back and forth, but I wanted to pick something that kind of rounded it out, and it was between the movie I picked and another like similar movie. But I went with Spaceballs, one of my favorite Mel Brooks movies that I'd probably seen before ever seeing Star Wars or Alien or anything like that. So this movie was very special to me. And I was really worried picking it for this podcast to like watch it. I was like, I don't know if it's going to hold up. But honestly, 30 seconds in, I'm like, oh, no, it's perfect. We're great.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
fantastic.
as soon as the ship turns up and it's
On and on and on and on.
and it's one of those things. It's like one of those Family Guy jokes that's funny. Then they keep doing it, and it stops being funny, but they keep going, and it becomes funny again. It's just the ship starting in Spaceballs. That's when I was like you, Ryan. I go, nah, this movie's
Yeah.
funny.
There's just parts I was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna hold up, but in the world of like my first foray into like parody films, this was more than likely the first one. It was like this, The Naked Gun, Hot Shots we mention all the time. But man, this movie still fucking holds up. It's still, the cast is incredible. Rick Moranis is a goddamn treasure.
Every time he turns up on screen,
Yeah.
I'm laughing. That's the thing. But I tell you what, I didn't have any trepidation about this movie because about 3-4 years ago, so I think my daughter was about 12. I may have even been just during the pandemic. We're like, all right, T-Bomb, sit down. You're watching 2 movies with us, and we put on Airplane and we put on Spaceballs. And what was really interesting is Mrs. and I laughed the whole way through Airplane, and Tia didn't make a sound. She was just watching, going, "This is weird. This is weird," and we're dying laughing. Then we put on Spaceballs, and she doesn't watch Star Wars. She was laughing.
That's so fascinating because Airplane is like weird. It tonally kind of like grounded, like it's a pretty serious like subject matter, whereas, and I know it's ridiculous to say that, but Spaceballs is like leans really hard into the fantasy and the parody of it all. And
I mean, to the fact that they put a VHS tape in of the movie
it's
that's
great.
still being made, and just like,
yeah,
it's very self-referential. I will say something that's quite interesting to me right now is how quiet Will Hirsch is being right now. Will, don't you like Spaceballs?
Well, I'm being quiet because a heavy metal band is practicing right across like the way outside my window. So I'm hoping I'm not catching any of their amazing tunes.
You should just start moshing, mate.
I will say to the band across the street, you've gotten better over the past year. You have that going for you. They normally don't record when or practice when we record, but tonight
I can't hear it.
I
can't hear anything.
Good. I've been muting the mic, so hopefully, But in terms of this movie, yeah, this ain't it for me. Like, I don't hate it. I also think I have a lot of negative emotions attached to it because, kind of like Rudy, I've seen this movie only in school, and I've seen it like 95 times in school. Like,
Spaceballs?
This is one of those movies teachers like would put on all this, especially in drama, like drama class. Like so I've seen this movie at least like so many times. I didn't even need to rewatch it again because I've seen it so much, but only in classroom settings. Don't know why, but the negative feelings come from there was one annoying kid in particular who loved this movie and would quote this movie, and he was like an asshole to everyone in class, like one of those, a real theater kid who was just super catty and mean to everyone. Thought he was the best. Loved this movie, would quote it, like reenact it as we're watching it. So I think I just have this negative, like, I hate this kid, like in my head as this movie is like plays. So I have a lot of negative feelings attached to it because specifically that kid.
I want to back up. Did he also ruin Rudy for you?
I like Rudy.
Thank God. Okay, thank God.
No.
Rudy is a treasure to me.
Yeah, no. Every time they put Rudy on, I'm like, oh, great.
That sounds like this kid had like a really awesome birthday party with pizza and candy, and they went to Blockbuster and rented Major Payne, and someone wasn't invited.
Wait a second. I thought you looked familiar.
Finally, the truth will out.
Mhm.
Oh,
But
man,
I could
that's
see
interesting.
you tying your trauma to this film. Sure,
Yeah,
I've
but
done it.
but also it's just, it's one of those movies. I never really found it like that fun. It's one of those things where I'm like, I get the parody, I get there are things that make me laugh. Rick Moranis, like you guys said, is great.
Every
The
time.
we didn't find shit, like that line is really funny.
That's the funniest line in the movie.
Yeah, and
I think it's the most. It's the one that's lasted through the generations, most quoted, most used GIF. We ain't
Yeah.
found shit.
Yeah, that's great.
And the
Yeah.
fact that it's Tuvok, Tim Russ from Star Trek Voyager, makes it even better.
And I also looked up the woman who plays like the commander on the screen. She was also in Star Trek, maybe I think Deep Space Nine or something like that. I was wondering, I was like, how can I connect?
She's not Jerry. What's Jerry Rice?
No.
No,
That's
no,
not
no.
I just did look it up.
Seven
I just did see she's in a Star Trek thing. It doesn't matter. We don't need
I
it.
think
in a
you're right.
Star War.
Yeah. But man, for me, Rick Moranis, like, goddamn, Rick Moranis is so good. It's like the first thing too, where a movie I remember seeing where the dialogue felt like very improv-y, like
Yeah,
I
it made me miss. And I know the thing is, Rick Moranis though. I guess he was just it for my age. Growing up, he was the dad in so many movies. He was just so good in so many movies. And then, of course, he stepped away to look after his children, and all credit to him. But just watching Spaceballs just made me realize he's just funny
yeah.
every time he opens
After
his mouth.
he suffers severe brain trauma flying through the thing, he's just like, smoke him if you got him. It's just that like, listen, we can sit here and quote fucking Spaceballs all day, and we should. But I was just pleasantly like every beat, everything I remember so vividly. I've seen this movie so many times. I'm sure I wore out a VHS of this film, but it's such a fucking treasure. And it really is lightning in a bottle. And so much so that he was probably the only person, Mel Brooks, that could get George Lucas to give him his blessing to like, yeah, not only can you make a parody of it, we'll give you the team that did all the special effects too to help you out.
Yeah,
Just
we'll give
don't
you
sell
ILM.
anything.
You can put the Millennium Falcon in the background.
Yeah.
So okay, fine. So we got Will. Who could have told that Will was going to pick a Star Trek movie?
That's how I felt with Roger Rabbit. You guys gave me shit.
But so then you went very, very sort of like parody with Spaceballs. And I was quite surprised actually. I was expecting, I don't know, I wasn't
Quest.
expecting Spaceballs from you of all things, right?
I was leaning into Galaxy Quest. I thought it'd be a good companion piece to Star Trek. We bring that up all the time. Another one, shout out to my dear friend Joe. He mentioned this earlier. I should have picked, but Mom and Dad Save the World. My second favorite John Lovitz movie next to City Slickers 2.
Wow, that would have been a choice.
But did we really want to sit through another Jeffrey Jones film?
No.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, in my case, I was a basic bitch, to be honest. We know that I'm a bit of a Chris Nolan fanboy, and I remember being just so excited in 2014 when this movie was announced. It was McConaughey at the peak of the reconnaissance. It was Anne Hathaway. She was on fire. Jessica Chastain, everybody. And it's just Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. I said, I wanted to watch it. I wanted to watch it again with fresh eyes. I wanted to watch it and talk with you guys. And I dig it. I love it. It's a great movie. And I can't wait because I got a feeling both of you are about to just beat the shit out of me about this movie.
I don't know if I'd go. Yeah, don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know if I have strong feelings about this movie in any direction.
Yeah, it's a movie I've seen.
Really? I mean, okay, seriously. All right, so this is where
we're
we're
going to do it first.
We're starting with Interstellar because I'm like, take yourselves back to 2014. I mean, like I remember it coming out about 6 months after I started working at Right This Minute, which is the show that we all eventually met through. But I remember I went to a theater, I'd missed it when it first came out. I went to a nearly empty sort of theater about 2 weeks in. I definitely had sampled some of Arizona's finest edibles. And I remember this being such an experience for me. And every time I watch it, I always get the same experience. For me, it feels very quick. It flies, even though it's a
It
nearly
really
3-hour
does. Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
It's shot in just such a way that it has this sort of tangibility of reality. One of my favorite things about Interstellar is the fact that, like, when you're in space, you can't hear anything. You know, it's like it's got that thing that we talked about with Christopher Nolan, that he'll place a camera only in a way that was real.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's mounted on the front of a spaceship, or you know, it looks like it's mounted in a
I
place.
noticed that this time too on this watch, because we brought that up before, like how like certain Michael Bay things, like the camera is just detached, feels like a random object, whereas this, it feels meticulously placed in space.
Yeah, it's Christopher Nolan going, how would I actually shoot this for real if this was real?
Yeah.
And it's bonkers. It's Christopher Nolan always does something about time or some different way of telling the story. And in this case, he leans into the theory of relativity and starts baking our noodles. And I'm like, and you guys are meh about this movie? How are you guys meh about this?
I didn't. Go ahead, Will. Please.
Yeah, I'm going to picture Will's got something in the chamber. I can see it on his face.
Well, for a movie about a father and his kids and the loss of connection with them, I really only feel the emotion in this movie in like little spurts, like little moments. The rest of it feel like I actually don't feel this is a very quick watch. Like for me, this movie feels like it really, really drags. And there are parts where I'm like, this should feel either scarier than it is, or it should feel more epic than it is. And I think his approach, I think what bothers me about Nolan's approach a lot of the times is he's a little too clinical on how he approaches like movies. He's a little too cold and a little too emotionless. Weirdly enough, I feel like he dropped that for Oppenheimer. Like I felt like all of his bad instincts were gone in that movie. But this one is kind of the one where I'm just like, it's not hating anything, but it is kind of okay. And I just, a lot of times I'm like, we can cut a half hour out of this movie and get it really
elaborate
cooking.
a little, you know, like what, and I'm not, everyone is welcome to their opinion. I'm intrigued as to where it's sort of like it's missing the mark for you.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of it where there's some things like, the wormhole, the revelation that there's someone left it here for us. And they're like, oh yeah. So how are we going to solve this problem? I'm like, that moment needs way more like, what do you mean someone created a wormhole for us? Nobody is asking that. And to me, I'm like, just somebody who has watched as many movies as I have, I'm like, okay, because we're setting up like something later on, like, oh, this is actually people who said this, or this is like something like, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, there's something about that moment that sticks out as being like, that shouldn't be a yada yada. That needs to be like a what? Yeah. Like, excuse me?
We were getting sphered. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The sphere? Yeah.
Funny enough, I think Sphere did those moments better.
This movie has my now favorite cliche of someone folding a piece of paper in half and pushing a pen through it to explain what a fucking wormhole is.
For me, I always, every time someone does that, I immediately go back to
it's Event Horizon.
Event Horizon. Sam Neill does that. Yeah. It's like, what's the shortest distance between two? A straight line. No, it's actually nowhere. And so whenever everyone does it, oh, they're doing the Sam Neill thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know. This movie, to me, like I said, it just the emotional moments, they are there, like when McConaughey is watching the videos of his family and stuff, and and obviously like at the end is emotional, but it's just not carried out throughout the entire movie. And other than Tars, nothing else in this movie really like super works for me. And Tars is the greatest thing on the planet. And even on this rewatch, I'm like, I love Tars. Right, I can just watch that.
Thoughts on the movie Contact?
Better, like just a better movie. Like weirdly enough, like
I love Contact. It's one of my
favorites. just a really like, and so I think it's because I've seen other movies that were doing something similar but had done the emotional part better. For some reason, Chris Nolan at this point in his career just was not very good at the emotional stuff. I think he's gotten better since, but at this point, it wasn't there for me.
There's a lot of bombast, a lot of set pieces. I mean, like, I completely disagree with you, but because like for me, I was like, I mean, you know, you're talking about they don't explain the sphere, but I'm like, okay, well, it's because it's been around for them for 20 years and they've already sent the Lazarus missions in. It's like, they're like, well, look, we don't understand it, but we know what's happening and we have to save the planet.
Yeah. Right.
But like, for me, it just has this sort of like, I like the fact that everything's familiar but wrong. You know, so we come into this world where basically John Lithgow is our generation. We are, you know, he talks about when I was a kid, it's all about, you know, it's almost imagine him talking about lining up for iPhones and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So we're in this place that's wrong but right, in the same way that like they are up in Oregon or something like that, or Washington, I want to say, because you've got mountains in the background, but they're growing corn, so it's not that's wrong. You usually, if you're growing corn, it's all just sort of in a flat way. But I love like the Christopher Nolan approach is like, we're also gonna grow corn. But like, I always feel like the thing about it is that what I like is that when I was watching the movie, I always feel like I'm just half a step behind, which is what I like. I'm like, oh, where this is going? Oh, what's gonna happen? And then like, you know, then you get to the middle, and then you get the most surprising cameo from Mr. Cameo himself. But he rocks up with like this huge moment that I remember in theaters going, what the fuck? But like, I really, really enjoy this movie. It's one of my favorite space movies because it kind of, for me, along with Contact, is a movie that feels, you know, apart from Apollo 13, which is like a real movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's like basically a documentary where people are actually weightless. This is a movie that I'm just like, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
There are bits, you know, there's a bit where even I'm like, there's Matthew McConaughey and he goes, well, how about this? Like, I could just whip around that neutron star and like, you know, just like, he's all just like texts us about.
And you're in, you're just like, yeah, all right, fine. Yeah.
Yeah. We just whip it around and we just stay outside Gargantua. We're all good. Like, all right. Let's go.
Yeah.
Actually, if Glenn Powell from Twisters was the main character in this, you know, who knows?
Dollar sign.
Interstellars, yes.
Yes.
We got to wrangle them
Outer
wormholes.
Stellar.
Oh, whoa. Now we got a movie.
So I'm fascinated by this. So I'm telling you what, Will, what's one thing that works for you in this movie? What do you like about this movie?
Tars.
Yeah,
Tars is awesome. No, other than Tars, though, I do think like the actual structure of the movie is structured quite well. I do like the way it plays with time. It loses me a bit when we get to the Tesseract, where I'm a little bit like, okay, Nolan, you need to. Not that it's like super confusing, but it also just to me, I'm like, I guess we're full into spoilers at this point. When the moment in the movie, like at the very beginning, where they're like, I think it's like a ghost, you know, that's knocking down the books. I'm like, that's the dad. Like, and that's where I'm kind of sitting there, like in the theater in IMAX opening night, being like, yeah, I know it's McConaughey. Can we move along? Like, let's go. Like, I was just so far because I'm like, this is not a supernatural movie. And it's like a sci-fi movie. I'm like, there's no other path this movie can go down. So let's stop wasting time. So I think the structure is good. I just think the rest of it is a little too big. I think Nolan was a little too interested in like, isn't the science stuff cool? And let kind of the rest of it underbake a little bit. That was my feeling. And again, I don't think this is bad. I don't think this is his worst movie at all. It's just in his canon. It's like right in the middle for me.
Okay, I got one more question. I'm sorry, I'm fascinated with Will's take right now. Where do you put Tenet on Christopher Nolan?
That's close to the bottom. Like really? Tenet is close to the bottom because it might even be my least favorite movie of his because that's a movie where everything should work. I like if you gave me a list of everything about that movie, I'd be like, yes. And then seeing it, I'm like, yeah. You actually also have to like explain some of this stuff. Like, I'm sorry.
I'm with you. Okay, so this is my thing. So Tenet is Schrodinger's movie to me. It is Christopher Nolan's best and worst movie. And the reason I say that is because if you only watch it once, I mean, I had people that love Nolan movies say, oh, I turned it off after like 45 minutes. I'm like, I couldn't, I'm out. And I'm like, oh, well, I've watched it 9 times. And when you've, you know, and I'm like, once you've watched it 6 times, I finally understood the movie. But I'm like, which is what makes it the worst and best of the movies that
we
he's
shouldn't
made.
Have to watch it. Like, but again, like I do the same thing with The Prestige. Like I've seen that movie hundreds of times, and every time I do, like I'm always surprised by the twist, even though I know it's coming. And in this one, in Interstellar, like, yeah, I know that Matthew McConaughey is the ghost, but what makes it work is that it's fucking Matthew McConaughey. Like you're just on board. Like if it was anyone else, I probably wouldn't give a shit. Like I couldn't see Christian Bale doing that. Like I'm emotionally connected to Matthew McConaughey as this character.
Yeah. He's very likable from the beginning, and then it was like you got young Timothy Chalamet doing an incredible Casey Affleck.
Yeah. To the point where I forgot Timothy Chalamet was in this movie.
Muad'Dib himself.
I was like, yeah, Casey Affleck plays the kid throughout the entire movie, right? And then seeing this again, I'm like, oh, that's right. He's not in it. Okay.
And then also the young Mackenzie Foy as young Murph. Great casting, but also fantastic actress. Like I said, I mean, she's probably in her 25 right about now. But like I remember when she was in this, and I think she ended up in one of the sparkly vampire movies. But I thought she was an excellent bit of casting for like connecting the emotion between father and daughter, and like especially now, as a dad myself and things like that, that it's absolutely sort of tearing at the heartstrings kind of stuff. But I also thought that from the her to Jessica Chastain moment,
that was good.
Yeah, it is very good. Jessica Chastain, like she's got such an incredible face. Like she's got like I know it's a certain strength.
They need to get Jessica Chastain, Isla Fisher, and Bryce Dallas Howard in a movie to get together.
Triplets, yeah.
Triplets. There you go. Yeah. Perfect.
I will say my one thing about the movie I don't like is Anne Hathaway's character. I don't think they wrote that. They didn't give her anything to do apart from be slightly annoying or make
very cold,
basically the worst decisions in every moment. Like for what considering Anne Hathaway and where she was in her career, and considering that this is like the second biggest character in the movie, I was like, when you watch it again, I'm like, she's got nothing to do.
This is coming off the Dark Knight Rises, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, Marie Cotillard was right there.
Marion Cotillard. She's crazy though. She's like she's a straight up crazy person, but she's French.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing that I'm
I was gonna say my Anne
Hathaway.
Yeah. Go. Sorry. My favorite thing in this movie is them making Michael Caine kind of look like Ridley Scott. That was pretty funny. You didn't notice that?
I know
I didn't
what
clock
you mean, but I was watching. What I was looking at is like because we jump 25 years or something like that,
23,
whatever.
Yeah, 23.
And so at the beginning, I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, they're de-aging him, as in they've given him more brown hair so that he could then age up to where he was. And I never really noticed that until this watch. So I'm like, the thing is, because he was, if it's a Chris Nolan movie, Michael Caine's going to be in that movie.
Yeah,
true. But like, he's great. I love Michael Caine.
Yeah.
But I lied to you. I lied to you, Bruce.
I did think that part of the end was a little weird when they end up on a cafe on another planet and Matthew McConaughey is sitting across from Michael Caine.
It's the cafe from Spaceballs.
Oh, now it makes sense.
But so for anyone that hasn't actually seen the movie Interstellar, it involves a farmer who used to be in NASA, who lives in a slightly alternate future, which is somewhat terrifying because half of the planet basically died from starvation, and they live in a world where they've even like changed the textbooks and stuff like that to just say, look, we need people to make food. But also turns out that NASA does exist, and he gets directed to NASA by a gravity thing. You know what? Doesn't matter. Christopher Nolan takes us to space and plays with time. And the thing is, I think that Will agree with me on this one, is that Hans Zimmer is crushing it in Interstellar. I remember, like, I got all the behind the scenes. I've watched all the behind the scenes. I love watching behind the scenes of Chris Nolan movies. And when it got to Hans Zimmer, like, basically, he went... Because I went to boarding school. I don't know if you guys mentioned. I know this.
What? Here we go.
Hold on. We got to hear the story.
But my boarding school also had one of those massive organs that's the size of a wall that is played with multiple keyboards and you're playing with your feet, and it's this wall of sound. And that is very similar to what Hans Zimmer then used for this. He's like, he even described it. He just wanted this cacophony, this wall, this just extremeness. So he found like this massive organ in some old church and stuff like that. And that's why I listen to this soundtrack.
Yeah.
Just because it gets me like, oh my god, this
That
is incredible.
the song "Time" is maybe one of the best like workout songs you can ever have on any fitness playlist. It'll like nothing will make you run harder, farther, and faster than hearing that song come on your iPod Nano.
Mine is that there's no time for caution. Is the one where the docking scene. So that is for me.
Oh
that
yeah.
is the scene I'm always waiting for. Is the docking scene where Matt Damon has destroyed the thing. It's spinning out. It's going to enter the atmosphere. And because I remember being in the theater, holding my breath, like biting my, and it's like it's just like inches apart, and it's just you just wait. It's for me, played me like a fiddle, and it's like when a filmmaker can do that, and I'm on board, and I'm on the edge of my seat, and I'm holding my breath, and the music is going for it as well. Then I'm like, whenever I hear that song, the whole movie scene plays out in my head. And that's when you know it's a banger.
And that scene, they're spinning so fast, and he says to Anne Hathaway, he's like, "All right, you take control if I pass out." And she's like, "You got it, dude." And then she just passes out.
Right.
He was talking to Tars. But yeah, no, let's jump back and talk a little bit about Tars, actually, because as a character, from the second he's like on the ship, you don't expect it because you're kind of a bit thrown off by these weird sort of space marine.
Yeah, right. You'd
robots.
expect them to be like androids from Alien or something like a
Yeah.
little more sophisticated, not as rudimentary.
And the fact that he is the comedy relief throughout the movie of a whole bunch of humans from my off-world colony, and it's like,
I didn't care for them. I mean, I get why they did it, I guess, but like having Matt Damon do the voice of that character, but then also showing up as a character later on, like.
That's not Damon.
It's not Matt Damon.
What?
No.
The guy doing the puppeting of Tars. So again, have you seen the behind the scenes?
I mean, Matt Damon doesn't do the voice of one of the robots.
No.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
I've only seen this twice, so fuck you.
I forget who did the voice.
Bill Owen.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Matt Damon. Fuck me. Okay.
It is an interesting choice for the voice because he's not. They're not like. There's
nothing robotic about it.
Yeah, there's no vocoder. There's nothing like there's no odds. He's just talking like a normal guy, which makes me like it more. Like there is something about the idea that Tars is just a guy who is just a big blocky robot where I'm like, I love this.
Yeah, he's a Tetris piece with sarcastic humor. And it's like it shouldn't fucking work, but it does. And it's like, because I remember that was one when I'm watching the movie, I was so disappointed. And what a random design of a robot. But then as the movie goes on, you see how it works in many, many different ways.
Right.
Like, oh, wow. It's like
and it can
Swiss
do all
Army
these things like it's pretty cool.
But like, it's the bit where he's like, oh, I can put a little indicator light if you like, just as soon as I blow you out the airlock.
Yeah.
And he does that thing too where it subverts your expectation because you're conditioned in any movie like this where the AI, the robot, whatever, turns and becomes villainous or is like very strict, has to make sure that the mission is successful, and in order to do so, fuck all you humans. That does not happen here.
Right. Yeah.
I actually appreciate it.
Clearly the three laws work in this universe. The robots follow orders, but are also slightly sarcastic.
It did remind me though of like Kevin Spacey's robot in Moon a little bit, but that is very much like you were saying, like that you can tell is very much Kevin Spacey doing robot voice. The cadence is very robotic.
I'm afraid
but this is
can't do that, Dave.
Yeah, pretty
much.
Yeah, and then you got Case, the other robot, that's like, hey, Case, you don't say much. He goes, Tars says enough for both of us. And I'm like,
see, that one should have been Woody Harrelson.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah,
that would be great.
Stoner robot that gets on with Matthew McConaughey's character.
Of course.
Anytime McConaughey's talking about like space, I need you to stop saying odd shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Time's a flat circle. Whatever. Let's go.
Yeah. Funny story about Tars. My roommate Michael was a page at Paramount for a while, and they had Tars just kicking around like the office, like just the full Tars robot. Is just they would pass it and they just go, oh, there it is.
Oh, I think moving around, delivering like faxes.
Well,
and
it
stuff.
did it did get people coffee, but only to tell them they were getting laid off. So that's
That's how you got a pink slip at Paramount.
Yeah.
Tars comes walking up and then just carries you out.
exactly. So
I'll
you're
show
mad,
you.
but also kind of charmed. You're like, oh well, all right.
I'll show you. I'll go work at HBO. Ugh.
Like another for me, I always, I guess, like, I'm always taken back to the movie experience. Like the moment where the reveal of the giant wave behind him literally makes my blood just like your heart.
I mean,
your
seeing
stomach,
this
like, oh shit.
in an IMAX definitely would have had a very different experience for me. I don't know what I was doing in 2014 where I was just like, nah, I'm not going to see this. Like, I honestly don't know. But it took me a long time to finally watch this, probably because I think at the time maybe this movie didn't go onto HBO, it went on like a cable service that I didn't have, like a Stars or whatever. So I just didn't watch it for the longest time and forgot that it existed. And then was Inception after this?
Before.
Oh, Inception.
No,
I think was
Inception. I think was before.
Yeah, Inception was 2000.
Because it was like Dark Knight and then
Yeah.
Inception.
Oh yeah, Inception's 2010. That was 4
Yeah, I
years.
just never. This movie never, like, I was like, fuck, I have to. I think I was so upset that I just didn't see it in the theater that I'm like, well, it's not going to do me any justice seeing this on a smaller TV. So I just never did. And then I finally did watch it. I'm like, yeah, and I enjoyed this movie, but it just doesn't have like the same hook for me as other Nolan films. Like, I appreciate it. I think once it was pointed out to me that like all of Nolan's films are an allegory for how he's too busy making movies to be with his own family. So they all have these kind of broken family mechanics in these movies. And I'm just like, oh, it's
Like
just like
Spielberg's movies are always about
yeah, it's like, oh, I have to make a movie about this broken family because I can't be with my family, but also I got to make this movie to make the money to support my family. It's like, I don't know. That's always in the front of my brain watching his movies.
It's funny when you say that, actually, because that's a really good point. It's like, sorry, I
Look at
gotta
all
be
his
Batman.
movies.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I gotta go to space. Sorry, I've got to put an idea in somebody's brain before I can come back.
Sorry, I got to drop a
Wow.
fucking nuke later,
Wow.
homies. Yeah, I think Inception is probably the biggest proponent of that. Like, him trying to get home, like he's doing all of this shit, all of these missions just to get home to his family. Like, that's what kind of all of Nolan's films are.
Wow, you kind of baked my noodle a little bit. Another thing that a lot of people talk about is Gargantua, the black hole, in as much as they went in and did the math and they actually simulated it, and to the point that even like scientists are like, no, that's bang on. In fact, can we borrow some of that coding that you use? Like I mean, it looks cool as shit.
It really.
There's just a thing. It's like even going through the spherical hole where your brain's just like, what the hell is happening? And suddenly we go through it, and then like, yeah, going through Gargantua, that whole thing as well. There's just moments. Another one is when we're on that ice planet, where there's that shot where you never really explain it, but there's ice above and below, and we're kind of in a middle valley, and it's just like, and all the force perspective and everything that's happening it's a feast for the eyes.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is a gorgeous film. And on a technical level, the sound design is incredible. Yeah, like we were saying, the cinematography is great. There's a lot of craftsmanship in this movie. I just think that maybe there was something about Nolan at the time when he was working with Warner Brothers that maybe it was just a work of, because I really do feel like when he moved over and then to Universal and started working on Oppenheimer, that like a lot of there was a lot that changed about his filmmaking style for the better, I think, because I'm not the biggest Nolan fan. I don't think I've ever seen a bad movie from him, but I'm definitely, if I'm like to name my top directors, he's not on the list. And I don't know what it is. He just never quite does it for me. And I think this movie
It's too good.
is an example. It's too good.
Well,
it's not trash enough for me, baby. Let me tell you.
Do you think that's kind of like how you're feeling now? Because like, because when Nolan was newer, and when we had Memento, and then when Dark Knight came out, everyone is like, that movie is Batman and Heat combined.
We're just going right past Insomnia.
Right. But it just, yeah,
Right.
I felt it. But what I mean is like, he was white hot. He was hot as shit. The thing is, like, I know what you mean, that at the point of now, in the 2024 lens, when we look back and we see what, like, Matt Reeves is doing with the Batman, or we see what he's doing with Oppenheimer, is that you can, when you look back at it, you're like, oh, yeah, man, it was the biggest thing in cinema at the time. But in retrospect, is it going to, like, survive the test of time, in much the same way that the Batman has kind of changed how even the way my missus looks at the Dark Knight trilogy. She goes, oh yeah, they're good, but it's not the Batman.
Maybe, but I remember seeing this movie, like I said, opening night in IMAX and walking out being like, that's fine. Like, I just wasn't blown away by it. And then the one movie I'm really alone in my opinion on, I was actually shocked that people love this movie as much as they did. I'm kind of on The Prestige. Like, I like it. It's a good movie, but people are like, that's the best Nolan movie. And I'm like,
I didn't say it was the best. It's just my favorite.
No, but I know a lot of people were like, that's my favorite one. And I'm like,
no. I was like, oh yeah, it's good. Like, I'm with you that, like, the world thinks it's the best of them all. And I rewatched it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. Like, I like it's great, like, Switch and stuff like that. But honestly, The Prestige was quite low on mine as well.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
Not
Good.
like it's in the bad territory. It's in the less good, you know.
Yeah.
But you look at his career. I'm like, I don't think he's made a bad film. Like, none of his movies.
I wouldn't say no.
I think the only one people would say is Tenet, because it is impenetrable.
Sure. Yeah.
You know. But even then, I fucking love Tenet. I love it because it is impenetrable. I think then the more I watch it, the more I'm like, I understand it, and I'm like, wow, what a ballsy move to make half a movie.
Right. Yeah. A movie where we're missing literally half the context.
But you get like
the relationships.
So Interstellar being his, 2001 homage, The Dark Knight being his Heat homage, and then Tenet being his Bond homage.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer, I don't know.
I mean, Oppenheimer is just his, like,
in the mouth of madness.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
That is of all the movies from season 1, that is the one that's really stuck around, and I can't.
That and The Witches of Eastwick.
In the Mouth of Madness is a movie that I think about more than I honestly want to admit.
It pops up a lot too, like
it does. It does. It's one of those movies that, like, I think people are realizing, is
that's John Carpenter's Interstellar.
Yeah. That's what they called it at the time, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, just you wait 20 years, you'll see what I mean.
You're right though, like, looking back on his career, much like Christopher Nolan, like, all of his films are like very polished, very clinical, very precise.
Yes.
There's
too much.
Yeah, and only, but like, in hindsight, like, looking back at them now, when you rewatch one of these movies, you're like, it just feels so clinical comparing even Oppenheimer, like, sure, he's doing different things, but it still feels very meticulously crafted,
I think his best movie is Dunkirk.
Oh yeah.
It's very exciting. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It doesn't fuck around. It's extremely realistic. It tells an incredible piece of history. Like, it's kind of down and dirty, and it's like that is for just like oh man, do you want to go on a ride?
Dunkirk, And that's kind of one thing he is just obsessed with is time. Yeah. He is just very obsessed with the mechanics of time. And corn, can't get enough of it. I think all the people in Dunkirk were played by stalks of corn, right? I couldn't tell anybody apart in that movie. So
we're not so different. You and I, we're both men of corn. Look at that intergalactic Rick and Morty fucking bit is great. I forgot. Dunkirk's another one too. Like, I was so, like, not into the idea of a Christopher Nolan event movie for some reason. I never saw it in the theater. I should have. So I don't know what it is. I mean, Dunkirk, Oppenheimer was, and I'm sure it was incredible. But Oppenheimer was, I think, the latest, the only Nolan movie I'd seen in the theaters since maybe The Dark Knight Rises or maybe Inception. I don't even remember.
Man, yeah, for me, Nolan movies were always like I think the only Nolan movie I didn't see in theaters was Tenet, because I didn't want to die of COVID.
Sure,
because it came out like smack bang as COVID just went.
Just you and Tom Cruise in the theater.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that is when that
was
came.
the movie that was going to save humanity.
I definitely saw it in a theater.
Yeah.
How did I see it in a theater?
Well, you're patient
Coppola
zero.
won- Yeah.
That's what it was. I had
Yeah.
the bat for lunch, and then
You
I
were
went
in
to the theater.
Wuhan, right?
That now it's coming back to me. Nothing happened.
You were
as
in
a result
Wuhan
of that,
eating
right,
moo
guys?
dang. All right, you were in Wuhan playing ping pong with moo dang.
You'll
Whoa.
find it. It's there. You've
We'll
almost
get
got
there.
it.
I got it.
But no, I mean, like, so for me, I mean, I get it, and I'm like, I appreciate you guys' opinion. I mean, I like the Interstellar makes enough sense that it's like,
Mhm.
you know, the whole purpose behind it is essentially Murph. You know, Murphy's
Yeah,
law, whatever
yeah.
can happen will happen, and therefore it has happened. Which is why we are sending a message back from the future as five-dimensional beings who can now represent time as a physical thing that we can use gravity to blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But if you do
It's-
think about it, you're like, all right, you gave me enough science that I'm like, okay.
It's not a difficult film to understand. I think it's just that once you get into the like actual science fiction, ghosty kind of port, like wormhole kind of stuff, just like, well, I kind of lost interest in that part of it. Like it looks cool and it's amazing, but I'm just like, all right. I mean, I get it. It just didn't like. It felt a little too whimsical for me for a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah, you know what it need. I don't know if I've talked about this book before, but there's a book called Rendezvous with Rama. I think it's written by Asimov. I might be getting my mixed up. But Rendezvous with Rama is a book. It kind of goes nowhere, but it is such a cool setup and premise. And it's about humanity discovers a perfect cylinder floating through space. It's something that's obviously artificially made. It cannot
50
be.
by 20 kilometer cylindrical alien
Yes.
starship. This is an Arthur C. Clarke book.
That's what it was. Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah. And the idea, like when you're coming across it and they're like exploring, like inside this, like figuring out how to get inside and exploring it, there's just a sense of terror and dread as like, what is this? And I feel like that was kind of missing from this movie. Is there needed to be something where it's like, hey, somebody left a wormhole here. That needed to be a little bit terrifying. I get it that like, well, the NASA scientists discovered it 20 years ago.
Right.
But we, the audience, are not the NASA scientists. We're getting introduced to this for the first time. We need to have that Spielbergian, like, excuse me, like, what's going on? And that doesn't exist in this movie.
It's because
because
you feel
time
like
is the enemy. Like that's the whole sense of dread, is time being that, like, he's got to do this mission because Earth is going bye-bye. Like that.
Yeah.
that is
And maybe that's the element, that's the square peg in the round hole that's not fitting for me, is I'm like, well, okay, you're introducing an idea that should be terrifying, but the movie's about this, so we're not dealing with that.
Yeah, I know, and I kind of get what Ryan's saying. For me, it's the existential dread of everyone's going to starve to death.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
That,
know,
like-
so it's that race against, quite literally race against
when
time.
they get back onto the ship and they've been gone for 3.5
years,
hours
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
fucking 20, they open the door and the guy's just in there's like, oh, hey guys, like that shit is so fucking, that like to me is terrifying. Like putting yourself, because you don't see him until they get back, like putting yourself in that shoes, just being stuck there for like, okay, I guess I'll take another nap. I mean, I don't like,
I mean, good thing astronauts being stranded in space is something that could
Yeah.
never happen in real life. So thank
Boeing's
goodness.
on the line. Sorry.
Yeah.
But you know, actually, that's the bit, because that's at least like, I like that bit with Anne Hathaway's character. She goes, "Look, I understand the science and I understand the theory, but I'm not ready for this."
Mhm.
You know, and it's like that bit that they say that every tick, you know,
Yeah,
when they
it's
land on that
24
planet, every
hours.
tick is like a week or a day
A
or
day.
something like that, and it's just, and then it all goes wrong, and then they're like, even I'm like going, oh my, yeah, I'm in, you know, McConaughey's position, going, this is decades away from my children already.
Yeah.
Like it's all gone wrong right off.
Mhm.
the minute they get there, it's 7 years no matter what. Like 1
Yeah.
hour is 7 years, is like having that weigh on your mind it's so dreadful, thinking that like,
Yeah.
okay, we have to hurry. You have that ticking clock. You don't need fucking space aliens and other shit. You get
Mhm.
there, it's the time, then you get the wave, and then they have to get back and get off
And
of this shit. It's crazy.
I think that's the most effective part of the movie, is when they get to that section and that playing with the waves and stuff. That's the most effective part.
I would also say the most effective emotional part, though, is Ellen Burstyn as Old Murph.
Oh
Mhm.
She crushes it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like I said, the dad watching this, I'm pretty much a bit of a mess when we get to this point.
Dude, I was thinking that too.
I like the way that we walk in and we see them and she's old and everything, and he walks up and he takes her hand and goes, "You told them I like farming," and I'm just like, I like how it just like,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of it because I'm right on the edge of like,
too.
holy shit, you know. And I'm
This
like,
movie, like, I don't have children, but this movie fucking it elicits a very emotional response. Like, you'd have to be ice cold enough to like feel something watching this. Like I said, when he gets back on the ship and he's watching 23 years worth of, video messages from his children, like,
give McConaughey, you got to give him like, he gets
so
a
good
clap for that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can't like, we always do this like Dreamcasting. I couldn't see anybody else in this role.
Yeah, maybe Cloris Leachman, but other than that,
But no, Christopher Nolan says similar. And he said it was because it's a movie that we did on the show, actually. I think for Arkansas, was it? But Mud. He saw him in Mud, and as soon as he saw that, he's like,
that motherfucker's going to space.
Yeah, because it's like, because they were saying not just like from his presence, but also like his just pure acting talent. And we all thought in Mud, he's amazing. It's fantastic performance. But yeah, I was on board because again, he's kind of like, he's relatable. I know he's like, McConaughey, gorgeous.
So malleable too. Like,
yeah. He works, and he's just like, even when he's like going, yeah, I'm a pilot and an engineer, he's just like, you just kind of believe him, it's like, he's got this kind of like blue collar Texas, but still intelligent kind of thing going.
So I picture you going into your kids' PTA meetings as they're burning, as they're undoubtedly burning their books, rewriting fucking history. All right, Tia says here, your new job is corn. Good luck with that.
I mean, the thing is, it's just, there's so much. Another thing that's great about Christopher Nolan, before we move on, he's just the master of getting things in camera. And like, one of those ones that people talk about is like, they literally planned ahead and they grew corn so they could just have corn as far as the eye could see. And then they sold it and made profit, which is always like the one that people talk about. It's like, how many times in a movie do you make profit of something? But then, also, like when you were talking about the Tesseract, which is a quite, a pretty special kind of like thing that not everybody works with, but how much of that was real? That they're using projection in these massive room, and like, so you can see behind the scenes where he's hanging in this room, but there's like 40 feet's worth of Tesseract all around them and projection and stuff. Then I'm like, you got to give that. That's what I'm like. I always give Christopher Nolan his due. Is that guy?
Yeah.
If I can't do it in camera.
Now you see shit like I just watched I watched Wolves on Apple TV, and
that movie was shit.
I didn't, it was innocuous. I
watched it, don't remember it.
It was like,
you know what I didn't like about it is that they were the exact same character, and I'm assuming it's called Wolves because they're basically playing Harvey Keitel's character from Pulp Fiction, who is the wolf, is he not? So I'm like, that's what they are,
pretty
fixes.
much. Yeah, but I guess, but from a filmmaking standpoint, like now it's like almost impossible not to notice when something is like shot in the volume. Like it's just, it has that feel to it. It's lens distortion, something like you can tell that they're in a room filled with fucking screens. Whereas Nolan, it feels very grounded, and for as fantastical as it is, feels real.
And yet, there is one movie made in the volume that's the most real looking of them all, which is the Batman.
The Batman's, yeah.
The thing is, the Batman doesn't look like it's shot on the volume. I've told you before, it's like you're watching these Star Trek TV shows and they're in the middle of a desert and no one's hair is moving. It's just still.
Right.
There should be bloody dust everywhere.
Even watching like the Penguin show, I'm like, there are certain parts that feel a little volumey, like, and I don't know if,
Thank you for reminding me that I need to watch episode 2, but I'm on board with that show.
They changed the date. Like I got so excited to watch it on Friday, and they're like, "No, we moved it to Sunday. Fuck you." Like, well, I'm not gonna watch it because
I'm not doing anything. That's the Lord's Day.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying about the volume, and I've had friends who have attempted to film stuff on the volume, and what people I don't think realize yet is the volume has very limited capabilities. It is not the versatile, like, be all end all, like, film saving tool that people think it is. Basically every project
solve the problems, but it helps.
It helps in certain, like they used it perfectly in the Batman On Star Trek, they
There we go.
anytime on Strange New Worlds they're outdoors and using it, I'm like, nope, guys.
Yeah, even
stop.
Mandalorian when they're outside, you're just like,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the edge. It's like watching old Star Trek, where you're like,
Yeah.
there's
Yes.
right.
there's where
So
the
it kind of
painting
works.
starts.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it has its
when
place.
they're indoors, it looks fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. That is the thing about Chris Nolan movies is they look fantastic because he goes that extra mile to get as much in camera as he possibly can.
It's so,
Joseph
like-
Krasinski's Oblivion was
Yeah,
one of the
that
first ones to
yeah.
use the volume, and they used it very well on that.
Mhm.
that wasn't
on
even
the
like
end of
the
the
volume though, right? That was they just had. I don't know if it was called the
So
volume.
it
or
wasn't
something,
it
right?
wasn't the volume in as much as you could move the camera
Okay,
and
okay,
it would change
gotcha.
perspective, but
They
it
just made
created an
screens.
environment that you
Right.
could then just program in any way,
Gotcha.
which is why it looked so good. You're
But-
watching that movie going, look at all
but
the
like-
reflections.
Like we talked about The Life Aquatic, like him actually building that set, it makes, I mean, I know budget won't allow, but like having elements like that make the movie so much more tangible and real. You
Mhm.
know?
It
Yeah,
really
and
does.
it's why I can't watch the first 3 Star Wars movies anymore.
The
Because you watch it
prequels.
and it's the first I mean the prequels. So when
Right.
episodes 1, 2, and 3. to
Shut up,
clarify,
nerd.
But like I put those
You're
on
right.
and I just like there's nothing
It's
real
that
about it.
2000s polish. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing. It's just green screen. I can I can
There's no
understand
weight.
Ewan
There's no
McGregor's-
weight to it.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. You just it's exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. Whereas this movie, I feel like everything. Like when
Even
it
like
comes to
the
Interstellar.
the wide shots when they're in space and you have a planet or the gargantuan like in the background, you see the tiny little speck
speck.
going guy like
It looks so good.
crazy.
Yeah.
This movie is like an okay movie, but an amazing screensaver.
All
Like you
right.
could just have this on in the background and like glance over and like, fuck, that looks good. Anyway, what was I doing?
No,
Yeah.
okay. Well, look, you know what? I'm been happy about this actually because I love Interstellar. I really want to watch it, but I think you guys have brought up some pretty valid points. But we're gonna move on. We'll move on from Interstellar. We'll stop me obsessing over Christopher Nolan movies. We'll talk about Oppenheimer.
You love Christopher Nolan movies so much you've contracted tinnitus.
Get out. Oh my God. Let's bounce on over. Let's take a slight hard left turn. Let's talk about Mel Brooks's Spaceballs, 1987, written and directed by Mel Brooks, Bill Pullman, John Candy, Daphne Zignia, Joan Rivers, Mel Brooks, and Rick Moranis.
Yeah.
And it's like this movie kicks off with the best sort of like just immediately leans into the Star Wars of it all.
Yeah.
We have an opening crawl. We then have this massive ship come in, and then from that point on, it's just pure ridiculousness from the get-go. But it's
such a different like parody when you compare it to like a Zucker Brothers movie. Like even like Robin Hood Men in Tights, like all of Mel Brooks is like straight up parody movies feel very different and fun compared to like a Zucker Brothers movie. I don't know what the distinction is, but they just feel so different.
I was listening to some people kind of talk about the idea that the Zucker brothers kind of pushed Mel Brooks away from what he was doing. Think about like with Blazing Saddles and stuff like that. That some of the later Mel Brooks movies, like this, like Men in Tights and
Dracula
stuff like that,
Dead and Loving It,
have taken some of that Zucker brothers like pastiche and sort of like and then pushed them, and then the Zucker brothers pushed into sort of like scary movie, and then it stopped being kind of like a parody and started being just vignettes of, hey, this movie was a movie, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this movie was a movie, right? And then it becomes member berries from South Park, and it's like, and it's lost all of its zhuzh.
It was like right around that, like the Not Another Teen movie, and then like disaster movie, and like all like that's when it really went off the fucking rails. Because none, like I think after Scary Movie 2, I was like, I don't need this genre anymore. Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
good.
even the second one, I remember seeing it in the theater. It's still like rewatching that now, I'm like, this isn't as funny as I remember. But going back and watching like an Airplane or a Spaceballs or a Hot Shots Part 2, they still hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. The fact that you just brought up Hot Shots, and I feel like I haven't seen it for so long that maybe I need to go and watch Hot Shots.
We bring.
It's
I'm
like,
pretty sure we bring it up every episode.
Yeah.
it is. It's got such a special place
Yeah.
in my heart. Hot Shots. I think it's one of
You
my,
like. I don't like the idea of a parody movie coming out now. I can't. The closest I can think of would maybe be like a Barb and Star, that type, and it's not even really like a parody.
Right.
yeah.
It's just
It's just
nothing
more
like.
like, yeah. That's
What are
like,
you gonna do? A comedy parody on like the Zone of Interest? Like the. I just don't think it would, I don't think it would fucking work, man.
no, you're right. There are. No one's really doing these movies, and if they are, they're straight to DVD.
Yeah, and they're terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, they're lazy. It's just, it's like, was it they had Remember the Spartans and stuff like
Yeah,
that. It's like,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's in whatever what is the Sparkly Vampires series called?
Twilight?
Oh, Twilight, yeah.
Twilight. Right,
Yeah.
right. So they tried, they did like a Sparkly Vampires one. It's just I think they need to sit down. I think Hollywood needs to sit down and watch classic original Zucker Brothers, classic original Mel Brooks, and
Yeah.
remind them how to actually make these movies. That it's not just borrowing moments and scenes. It's actually no, take the genre, but do your thing in it. Yes, Pizza the Hut, and yes, Dark Helmet, and yes, the Schwartz. And
But he
yes,
made it his
Yoga.
own. Like
Yeah.
what they're like parodying, but it all feels tangible in this world. Like you're like you buy into it. Like it makes sense. It's familiar, but it's different. And just like, yeah, all right, fine. He's a fucking half human, half dog. Great.
Mog.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm my own best friend.
Also, I think too, like for me specifically, like I grew up in a very like Mel Brooks friendly household. Like my dad loved Blazing Saddles, all those movies. So, and being like Jewish, like just connected. I connected with this movie on a different level too. I just like appreciate it more, especially watching it now as an adult. Like I appreciate that humor more. I didn't really get it. Prince Valium, I never clocked that as a kid. But watching it now, I'm like, oh yeah, he's yawning all the time. He's on Valium. Great.
I didn't put that together until this watch as well. And I'd forgotten about the whole like, oh, she's a Druish princess.
Yeah,
And I was like,
I'm only yeah, great.
See,
Yeah.
some of this, I'm just like, ugh, I don't know. Like, some of this is the type of humor that really doesn't work for me. For me, Mel Brooks, the height, like for me, the funniest thing is Young Frankenstein. That's like what I point to is like that's so funny, and I love Blazing Saddles, and the funniest thing in Young Frankenstein, it kills me every time, is to call it on the Ritz scene. is
That's great.
so unbelievably funny.
Great.
It annihilates me.
Another
every
one,
time.
like, but there's other like I grew up watching Life Stinks, which is another fucking fantastic movie where he's
That's a very
Goddard.
underrated.
Love
Yeah.
that movie. I think it's unfairly compared to the Eddie Murphy Dan Aykroyd one,
Trading Places.
Trading Places, yeah.
Yeah.
But and then what did I say? Life Stinks, and then High Anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another
Very
like,
underrated.
fucking
too.
amazing Hitchcockian parody. Like
Yeah.
the bit with the birds where he's just covered in fucking bird shit.
Yeah.
Like, he is a master at doing these types of movies.
Yeah. I don't, like I said, I think my negative emotions just come from being younger, and especially that stupid
Yeah,
kid.
for sure.
But this movie also had like a lot of humor at the time, where I was, especially in high school, I was kind of like, all right, I'm a little over this. The Pizza the Hut thing is always one of those things where I'm like, yeah.
I always like
Right.
the makeup on the guy, the
Yeah,
metal
it's
makeup on the
gross.
guy. Like
Yeah.
it's so clearly makeup, but it looks
Right.
fucking good. Like
Yeah. I don't know. So there are things. There are people who elevate the material. We've talked about Rick Moranis. I think John Candy does what he can
Yeah.
to salvage the character, but I don't think the character of Barf is very funny. I think John Candy does everything in his power. I don't think it saves it for me. I don't know.
I was going to say, I don't think Bill Pullman's doing a fantastic job
No.
in this movie either. It's like sometimes he seems like he doesn't quite know how to deliver the line. We're going to hyperactive. You know what I mean? But then
he's trying
Yeah.
to kind of do a Shatner, and really, like, who would have been a better fit would have been like a Eugene Levy in that role. Like, it would have been like that, because you've got SCTV.
America heartthrob Eugene Levy.
I think people reacting to Eugene Levy like he's Harrison Ford in this movie would have been the joke. When you put Bill Pullman in there, it's like he's already kind of a handsome
Or
guy.
like he did in Men in Tights, like a Carrie Elways, like that.
Yes.
Kind of.
Terry Elwes was
Yeah.
perfectly cast in Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And
No,
he can actually
undoubtedly.
do a British accent.
Thing is, he does such a good one that I'm like, I still double check. It's like, where is he born? Is he British? Is Carrie Elwes one of mine?
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, there are definitely funny parts. The diner scene is really, really funny to me. Especially because they actually went to the trouble of getting John Hurt back.
Yeah.
That's
so good. It's
great.
It's still the funniest part for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching again last night, and you're not wrong, because it starts off and I'm liking it and it's funny, but I was telling the guys before we started recording, because we had to record earlier this week, so I did a double feature of Interstellar, starting Interstellar at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm finishing Spaceballs at 2 o'clock in the morning. But like, it kind of like loses a bit of its steam.
Yeah.
But then you just,
I did too. Like halfway through,
down.
I'm like, I just because I've seen it so many times too. Yeah.
But suddenly there's John Hurt, and then there's the woman that they've got. It's not quite Sigourney Weaver. It's very well cast as well.
Yeah.
All of them. Yeah.
But the moment for me, I share it. I watch it every now and again online. I still think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. There it is, and then suddenly it brings in its little hat.
Yeah.
And it just fucking dances
and you
out
can
of... It's
you
the
can
funniest
see the
fucking
rod,
thing I've
like
ever
it's
seen.
so clearly like a practical thing, and then he delivers maybe the best line in the movie. He goes, "Oh no, not again!" Like,
not again. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like seeing this before ever seeing Alien, and not actually making the connection that was the same actor until I was much older. Kind of takes the gut punch out of that scene in Alien a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just still, I mean, like, even now I'm trying not to laugh. It's making me just like, my heart's like fluttering from how funny that is. It's one of my favorite things ever.
That he got John Hurt to do it, not knowing I thought he was just gonna have like a walk-on like cameo, like no, you're gonna recreate this entire fucking scene.
Yeah.
Like I should ask for more money.
Yeah. So good. I think that's what sets it apart from like a lot of the, when we're talking, because that could fall into like we were talking about, like Meet the Spartans, like it's a vignette of something.
Yeah.
Getting the actual guy, like getting actually John Hurt to do it again is what sets it apart and makes it like funny.
Yeah.
Because he's given the same level performance. He's not.
Yeah. Almost 8 years later too. Like,
yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. It's an absolute. That's for me is a home run.
And then they ended with "check, please." Like that should have just ended the movie right there. Like that should have been the end.
Thing is, that's how I remembered it. So I haven't actually seen this movie very many times. I've maybe seen it 3-4 times. So then, like, I was like, oh, it's the diner scene. This is the end of the movie. Then I'm like, and then it's like, oh no, by the way, he's also a prince. Here we go, bish bash bosh. The movie's over. I'm like, no, I agree with you. Yeah. The movie should just ended there. It's like, oh, cool.
Yeah, it's like a perfect. It's like a perfect ending with a perfect tag, and then we still got movie after that. It's like
they say for any good stand-up comedian. It's like if you're doing it and you've got an amazing laugh, it doesn't matter if you've got more material. Go, thank you very much. I'm
and on the high note, I do love all the visual gags, like Michael Winslow doing all the voices, the radar being jammed, like all of the little bits.
Radar being jammed is such a lame joke,
it's
and I
so
love
dumb.
It so much.
But that shot of the thing,
the shot is what saves it. Yeah,
it's so cool. Yeah, not the goo dripping out of the screen, whatever. But then he opens up, like you have the Mr. Coffee, the Mr. Radar, the Mr. Video Rental, and it's like all Mel Brooks movies. But then it's like 30 Rocky movies.
Yeah.
Or Rocky 500 or something.
Yeah, we'll go back to Rocky 5.
Yeah, they used Michael Winslow very well, like the bit where he's like, and like even when he's talking to them, he's making. What? Again, there are certain jokes in this movie.
They still hold on.
Yeah. There's funny. So I don't want it to seem like I'm like this movie's trash. No.
It's where you were when you saw it too. I mean that.
Yeah,
I think about that a lot. It's
but
hard to pull yourself out of that.
Yeah, there is still a ton of funny stuff in it. And it's just got great comedic actors in it. So there are people who are bringing it.
I've just read something that connected an interesting fact. I'm watching the movie last night, And so as we've mentioned, George Lucas had sort of read the script, loved it, gave some like got ILM involved and stuff like that. But there were bits throughout the movie when the Spaceballs are all sort of like evacuating the ship, and they're taking those escape pods, and they're shooting out, and I go, wow, that's just like in Star Wars. They've done it so well. I've just read here that all those sequences were unused clips from A New Hope, given to them by Lucasfilm. Yeah. So, and that's what I'm like. I was like, wow, how did they do that? God, that looks so good. They nailed it. Even the shadows. I'm like, oh no, fucking Star Wars gave it to me.
I had a shower thought for this movie, and I know we're not a very political podcast, but the idea of like Marjorie Taylor Greene seeing this movie and then coming up with Jewish space lasers. That's how I like make that connection. Like, was she just like writing like a tirade on Twitter and just had Spaceballs on in the background? She's like,
she thought it was a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
She's like, I can't believe nobody's doing anything about this. Yeah.
I think maybe the most ridiculous part of the movie, I remember when I watched it the first time, and I do remember my daughter laughing at like that, but it's the bit where, for no reason whatsoever, the ship turns into a giant maid with a vacuum cleaner. Why? Where that idea came up, how they came up with it, how they wrote it. It's like, I mean, literally,
it's ridiculous,
10,000 things you could have come up with before. It's like, no. She transforms into a giant maid with a vacuum cleaner.
But it also looks like the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Right.
all to get that one fucking Planet of the Apes joke at the end. Like,
right.
That's it, right? That's the last joke.
That's 100% why.
Oh shit! There goes the planet. Great. Again, before I'd ever seen Planet of the Apes. Great little parody.
I think the thing is though, I think there's a place for this movie. I think it's important it got made. It deserves the respect that it gets. Nothing that Will said is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it is what it is, but I think it's very much it's a very much just the right time, the right director, the right pastiche. It hit just when it needed to hit. That I think is why, and then it's like Will said, there is certain moments that are just elevated by Rick Moranis just being hilarious. Yeah. You know, the safari helmet with the,
his safari getup was so funny. I love that.
That's such a great bit of costume design, so and it makes you kind of like, why didn't Darth Vader have different armor for the different environments he was in?
The whole like Schwartz aspect is so silly, like with the rings and. Oh my god, the asshole bit, like there's just bits of it's timeless to me. The Dink Dinks, shout out to fucking Tony Cox. I clocked him. He's in Me, Myself, and Irene. So Stephen Tobolowsky's in this when they capture their stunt doubles, and her stunt double, the princess, is a guy smoking a cigar with a Hitler mustache.
But dude, funny enough, that's right, and it's like that reminds me. When you mentioned that, like, so when I was in Hong Kong, I was 18. I think I mentioned I was in that terrible movie as a henchman. But like, I remember, so we've got Maggie Q, she's still quite a famous actress. Mm-hmm. This is one of her first movies. And so there was a stunt where Edison Chen and Maggie Q jump out the back of the car I'm driving. But then I'm, of course, on set watching all this go down. So then it comes to let's do it for real. And it was some 23-year-old dude like just dressed like Maggie Q that jumps out
with a Hitler mustache.
I just found it so funny, like the way that like stunts work. Like there's another great stunt in the movie where, again, so this whole fight scene is going on inside this people character that all I'm doing is driving. But there's a bit where Maggie Q's character kind of kicks the person behind her, like so she's sitting and she goes whoop-ah! And the way they did it is there's a guy lying on the floor with his arm in a pair of trousers holding a shoe and just goes whoop-ah! And it looks so good on camera, and you're like, wow. And like the movie tricks, when you get on set, the little things that they do, the smoke.
Can't do that in the volume.
But even like the bit in when they're in the safari thing and they're on a land speeder, and you see the mirror sitting on top of a mirror.
You can see the mirror,
How Star Wars did it with that smudge of Vaseline, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does make you long for the time when Lucasfilm was cool about stuff like this, like before they were owned by Disney and everything is like litigated to hell back in the day when they're like, oh, you want to make fun of our movie? yeah, do you want to use
Yeah.
our stuff? You know, like
Yeah.
they're
That's
it
it's
used to be chill.
you couldn't do like that's it's so cool that George Lucas was on board. If there was anyone else doing this other than Mel Brooks, like maybe the
Yeah.
Zucker brothers, like maybe,
I
but
just think Mel Brooks had the juice, you know,
yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
considering the movies he'd made, they're like, oh yeah. Mel Brooks,
He had the juice, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of them.
So I just seen. Did you guys see the original casting for Lone Star?
No.
James Caan.
Wow.
That might have been
Jesus
so crazy
Christ.
that would have worked. Like that's he would have made that so dark.
Notorious funny man, James Caan.
Hey, Jagoff.
I
But
think
I could
mean,
see it.
He just doesn't have
Yeah.
that handsome, like they're basically trying to capture obviously Harrison Ford, that look and feel. I don't think James Caan fits that. Certainly don't think a Eugene Levy fits that. You psycho.
but that would be the joke is just you have
Yeah.
everybody react like he's Harrison Ford and
But-
it's Eugene Levy.
Yeah.
See, the other thing that's interesting is that I didn't realize until like just now, but like this was an unknown Bill Pullman. So it's,
Mhm.
we know Bill Pullman as Bill Pullman,
President
and,
Bill
like,
Pullman. Yeah.
President Bill Pullman. But yes, but in this case, none of this is just some guy.
Yeah.
So
Or
this
like
is
a Dennis
people being-
Quaid, maybe like
I could see Dennis Quaid.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like-
I could. Honestly, I could see the other Quaid doing it as well, but only because he crazy.
Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid.
Oh shit, Dennis Quaid and Randy Quaid is barf. Or Chevy Chase, but like again, he's too
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I don't know about
Steve
that.
Martin was the original choice for Colonel Sanders. I could see that.
yeah,
Okay,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I'm into that.
Um,
I'm into that.
And why? Is there something I'm missing? Okay, I just want to ask. I'm going to be honest. I'm putting this out this to the world that's saying, I don't get it. Why is it plaid when it goes? Is it just because it's funny? Because is there something that I'm missing about being super fast suddenly going to plaid?
I don't.
Is there
I
a
mean,
deeper joke to this? Is this a commentary on a popular sort of thing that people were wearing at the time?
I think it's like the referencing like the pattern of the lights from 2001 when he's going through that thing. Like it kind of looks has
the
that.
mushroom scene,
Yeah.
when the drugs kick in. That's the one thing I'm going. Plaid, it's funny, but why?
Yeah,
And then
that's one of
Elon had to
those-
fucking ruin it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
ludicrous,
that's-
dude.
Thanks, Elon. Well, he's ruined
Yeah.
plenty of things.
What?
Twitter,
Yeah.
to name one.
There are a few. My only negative thing to say about Spaceballs, which I love, is the many Star Trek references. The Vulcan death grip. When they're doing the teleporter, he's like, "Well, it works on Star Trek." Get out of here.
I like the.
I think it's the only part that
No,
works.
you got to move it up here. Ooh.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, still funny. Still funny.
But
yeah.
speaking of Star Trek, we do have one more movie to talk about.
Yes. Wait, Ryan, where are you going?
I'm about to teleport the fuck out of here.
So straight up, let's talk about the Wrath of Khan. But I just want to immediately go, Ryan, what's your take on this movie?
For me, like I never grew up watching Star Trek. Was very aware of it. Like I said, I think the first one I remember seeing was 6, which I enjoyed. Like I like that, but I just never clicked with me. I didn't even get into Star Wars until I was like much older. My brother had like taken my dad to see all the Star Wars movies because he was born in 76. So like by then my dad's like, fuck you, I'm not taking you to see Star Wars. I've already seen that shit dozens of times. So it just never clicked with me. Like I never watched the shows, and I don't know. I was just never into it. And it was very like soap opera to me. So even watching this movie, which came out in 82,
82,
right?
yeah.
So I was born in 83. So, but it felt very much like like it was so glaringly obvious for me that they took a TV show and turned it into a film. Like it felt budgetarily, it just had that feel to it. Like it
Okay,
felt like a
so let Will and I add a little context to that, because Star Wars came out and things blew up about
even Dune, right? Like Dune came out.
right? So they
Pretty
made
soon after, yeah.
they made Star Trek, the motion picture,
Mhm.
which is not great.
Yeah.
Because it leans into, it looks great. unfortunately too much. Like it's 45 minutes of the movie is just people masturbating, looking at the Enterprise in pretty situations. I mean, like that's why I like Lower Decks, because man, do they have so much fun making fun of these situations and these moments. But the first one's taking itself too seriously, and it's shot a bit too seriously. It just doesn't. It's just a bit too grown up. That's why they got, like, from the first one, they're like, all right, Gene Roddenberry, you need to step aside. Let's bring in the second one, and let's add a little buckle to that swash. And so the second one is very much, no, let's get into the fun. What with the swashbuckling of the TV show? Let's go on a bit of an adventure. We want James Kirk to be a bit of a this, that, and the other. So let's recapture the magic. So your analysis, Ryan, is spot on, but it was deliberate at the same time.
And I love I love the core idea of it. Like, you have this older crew training like the new younger crew members, whatever.
Yeah, the
I love that. I love that.
Star Trek training.
I like that aspect. I mean, they really go fucking all in with this opening training sequence where shit's blowing up and people are fucking flying. I'm like, I'm aware it's a training sequence because Kirstie Alley's character is just sitting there like, and everyone else is doing fucking backflips. I'm like, what? Right. And then the door opens. They're like, well, you fucking failed. And
it was 60-year-old like DeForest Kelly like, throwing himself over.
How did I do? Like, okay.
But I like that because you watch that scene and it's kind of like, because it's a simulator, it's very much emulating the way the TV show was. So nothing's moving around. There's kind of a small explosion and people are being very dramatic.
Right.
Whereas later on, the explosions get a lot more realistic.
Why would they simulate? Like, it's just it's just a ridiculous premise to me. Like, of them
Kobayashi Maru
having to act like, okay, this is going to go haywire. You're like, I'm picturing myself as one of those members. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get exploded again. Figure it out. I've been here all day, like doing fucking backflips.
It's really funny when you see the 2009 Star Trek and they're doing the same test. They're doing the Kobayashi Maru, and they were like, we're under attack. What do you want to do? And it is funny to think like 20, 30 years later at the timeline, they're like, we got to make a show out of it, guys. Like,
and those modern, because I've seen the more, there's 3 modern movies or
the Kelvin timeline.
Is it 2?
Yeah. There's 3.
There's 3. Okay.
You saw the 2 J.J. Abrams ones. You haven't seen the James 1 or the James Lin.
Justin Lin
one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I like, because in the first Star Trek, like saying in the reboot one, Zoe Saldana, she just sort of turns around and she's being almost sarcastic. Oh, and turns out we're stranded. You know, what do you want to do, Captain? Like, so
and Chris Pine is just hamming it up. Yeah,
Chris Pine would be a good Lone Star.
Ooh.
He would absolutely kill it.
Yeah, but he's played that role many times.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Spaceballs 2 from the twisted mind of Josh Gad can deliver.
So Ryan, like, first of all, you pointed out the whole swashbuckling thing, but then there was something you texted us, which is, so is this standalone? And I'm like, well, look, if you understand who Captain Kirk is, right, and the Enterprise,
that's what I was
like. But technically, it's a sequel to one episode, but you don't need to. I've never seen the episode.
Right.
I've never seen.
But was Ricardo Montalban in that episode playing? Okay.
Yes.
So they just brought back like this one-off character from the series.
Yeah.
For diehard fans. Like,
it's in retrospect, it's really strange, like how they landed.
They pulled a Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, they kind of did. It's such a weird, especially because there were villains in the show who reoccurred more than once, and Khan's in one episode. It's a good episode.
But did they have that? They have that history, like that backstory as part of that episode.
That's like exactly the plot of the episode. And so so the reason he's pissed is they put him on SETI Alpha 5.
That's kind of cool.
And then he never came back to check, which is always something that they joke about in Star Trek, like Lower Decks, is like they're really good at first contact, they're shit at second contact. So they've gone and dumped him on this place, but then it's all gone tits up, which is why he's so angry. But I'm like, this is what I think one of the only Star Trek movies where we're not talking Romulans, we're not talking Klingons, it's just this guy that hates.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, I didn't care that when they redid it with Benedict Cumberbatch, right? That was kind of like a whole.
It's fine. I like it anyway. I'll defend it like Will.
Again, it's a movie I've seen. I didn't retain it. But this movie is super fun. It's ridiculous. I mean, like, but it felt very much like I'm watching a made for TV version of a movie, but that's just because it's made so long ago.
Disagree.
I mean, the problem, it's kind of plagued Star Trek for a long time, up until like really once they got to the Kelvin, like the J.J. Abrams movies, which is budget's always been a problem for Star Trek. It's always dogged them. So yeah, it's not going to be like, like until you get to the Abrams ones, you don't get budgets on the level of a Star Wars.
But conversely, that kind of adds to the charm of it. Like I get that, that makes it very unique in its own right. And
it forces them to make movies that are not copies of Star Wars.
Now, you guys were fans of the show prior to, well, no, because you would have not been born yet. So did you guys watch?
I grew up, it's on syndication. You just turn on TV.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, did you watch the shows before watching the films, or had you seen the movies and then went back and watched the show?
Yeah. So for me, I'm
fascinated by it.
When I grew up, something I think people don't really realize is back in the 90s, Star Wars was dead. Like it was not, they were not making more movies. Nobody cared about
special editions on VHS, and that sort of created a second wind for it. But
that was more the mid 90s though. Like it was 95, 96 is when they started doing that.
I remember seeing them in the theater, like the
97 they did the re-release. But like, so I was 11 by that point. So for up until then, Star Trek: The Next Generation is what everybody was into. Like that's where all the toys.
Everybody.
I mean, there were toys, there were Las Vegas attractions, there were everything. Like
they built the Enterprise in Vegas at one point. Remember?
They sure did. So Star Trek was what I grew up with. I grew up with The Next Generation. It was like the first show I watched. And then the original series was on syndication, so I watched it all the time. Star Trek 6 was the first Star Trek I saw in theaters. So
me too.
Yeah, so I was into Star Trek way before I even knew that Star Wars existed.
But specifically The Next Generation, is that what you're saying? Like, because I remember that being on all the time when I was younger, just never watched it.
Also, there's also the animated. So they did, was it 2 seasons of the original show, Will? And then they did an extra season of the original cast.
There's 3 seasons of the original show, a shortened third one because they got canceled. But then they came back and did 2 seasons of an animated show, which, if you like it, cool, good for you. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but then I was Next Generation. The original series was syndicated, and I would rent those VHS tapes all the time.
How many seasons? There must be hundreds of fucking seasons. Like, just
there's. I mean, look, even with just the Next Generation, there's like, was it 100 episodes or something like that? And then you add in Voyager, and then it was Deep Space Nine, and then it was like.
I get that it was honestly so big enough for it to yield these spin-offs and everything.
In the 90s, Star Trek was dominating.
Yeah.
It was like the fact
on TV,
multiple different shows all about different ships and stuff like that, and it's like we're all just eating
on the Sci-Fi Channel on cable. It was only Star Trek and the fucking Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like, that was it. It's just
the best channel on TV. I didn't need any other channel.
X-Files was not in syndication yet, but I just never, like, it was always on. And I think for me, it was especially back then, like, you couldn't just start at the beginning and watch shit like that just because it was only on cable. Like, you weren't getting DVDs of the show, for me at least.
Yeah.
It was so overwhelming that I couldn't just access this and be thrust into this world. At least
definitely, like the movies always felt like you could pretty much get into, but like the shows, back before the age of streaming, if you wanted to like jump in and start a show, it was really, really hard.
I couldn't even fathom doing it now. Like, I wouldn't even know where to be. Like, this
20 years ago, my missus and I, we made it the mission, let's watch every episode of the Next Generation. And so this was right at the beginning of torrents, right? So what we had was a constant torrent that we were always 5 episodes. So as soon as we watch one, we delete it and it'd start downloading the next one. And we just went through the entire show like that. It took us months.
It's amazing. It's amazing you made it past the 2nd episode of Next Generation, because I'm telling you, if I had watched this as they aired and I got to the one with the space Africans, I would have been like, this is the worst show in the history of shows. I would
Honestly,
have given up.
I think one of the only shows. I love how we slightly stepped away. We're just talking about Star Trek, but I watched it every week. I think it came on at like a 6 o'clock on BBC Two on a Tuesday, and I was there. And like my brother used to come watch it with me because I'm like, Chris, come watch it. And we had this whole thing that during the opening credits, every time the ship would come by, we'd dive onto the sofa and stuff like that. We had a whole skit that we would do with the opening sort of credits of the show. So it's like a very much like, I love The Next Generation, but what I really like is that what they did with the original crew for a show that lasted 2.5 seasons, then got cancelled, then many years later gets brought back as a movie that doesn't really work. But then we get Wrath of Khan, which sets off. So Wrath of Khan.
The original Star Trek show was only 2 seasons.
2.5.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. I thought it was like fucking 100 of them.
Existed.
Yeah, and it got canceled
kidding.
after like season 1. It was like canceled, and then there was a fan campaign that like there was so many letters and so many like fans wrote in that they brought it back.
Wow.
But syndication.
Yeah,
sure.
Syndication, global syndication. So that's just being put out, and it's in the UK and it's in Hong Kong, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You turn on TV on a random day. Oh, look, it's Star Trek. So everybody knew Captain Kirk. Everybody knew Spock, Scotty. Everybody knew this. So that when they were able to, think about it. I mean, what is an example? Think about some TV show that existed in the 90s, lasted 2 seasons, got cancelled, but comes back now as a movie franchise that then goes on to last another 20 years and have a spin-off. You know, it's a wacky story.
I was going to say Sliders.
Yeah,
Sliders. That's what we need is a Sliders.
X-Files, yeah.
I mean, X-Files went for 11 seasons.
Yeah.
But like, all right, so back to Wrath of Khan. As otherwise we're turning into a Star Trek podcast. But
yes, finally.
is what I really enjoy, and I always think that it's the strongest part of both the Star Trek universes, Next Generation and this, is just the fact that they all know their characters and they know each other.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
The interplay between, you know, like Bones, like DeForest Kelly is just, no, you already have Vulcan mind, like even like, you know, Ryan.
I was like, I clocked on, like, yeah, they got me there. I'm like, you really skirted the line on that, like so much though that I'm like, I kept thinking like, okay, Carl Urban was great in that role. Like I remember him in the more modern ones. Like he was great in that. Honestly, the only kind of thing I remember from that was like it was Carl Urban in the modern ones. But yeah, I mean, listen, the chemistry they all have, like it's amazing that it's not surprising that it never went away. Like it's like they showed up on set and they knew exactly what the assignment was and they fucking nailed it.
I do like that what Ryan said at the beginning of the show was like, you know, how it's essentially the plot of the second one is the same as the sixth one, in as much as the plot of Wrath of Khan is, all right, guys, we're too old to be doing this. It's time to let the young kids do it. Yeah. And then we go on and make 5 more movies that by the sixth one, it's like, we're all 70, but we're all still on this shit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, because Jesus, that one came out, what, 90 something? Right? 90?
Yeah, 91. Yeah.
I just remember the opening scene of that where it's in like 0G and they're
the floating pink.
Yeah, the Pepto-Bismol.
Oh, the Klingons. Yeah. They went back on that real quick in Star Trek canon. Like nobody liked the purple blood. Everybody was like, "This is stupid." I think it was Klingons have red blood now. It looked cool at the time, but yeah.
I just remember that, and then the guy
Christopher Plummer, man.
Yeah.
Oh yes. That was that, and then the guy's testicles being on his knees.
Yeah, classic. And Iman being in that movie as well. Anyway, we're not talking about 6, we're talking about number 2. But the thing is, so Ryan is like, so you probably don't know this, but so inside all of the Star Trek movies, Wrath of Khan is technically the first in a trilogy. Okay. So it kicks off Wrath of Khan, and then immediately after that, it picks up and it does the search for Spock, and then immediately after that, it kicks off and it goes into the voyage home, which is like, and it's really fun. If, you know, so the same director, the director Nicholas Meyer that did this one, he also directed the 4th one. Did Nimoy do the 3rd one? I'm not sure. But it's a really fun, really fun arc.
No, Nicholas Meyer, he produced 3 and 4, directed 6. Nimoy directed 4, and then Shatner did 5, which was A Crime Against Humanity.
Yeah, and there's a 7, right? They made 7?
Seven is Generations. That's the one with Picard.
That's the overlap.
And them. Yeah.
The passing of
like,
the phaser.
Yeah.
But it's like, so we set something, it's great sort of premise. It's kind of like, all right, so we've got a bunch of students on board. They're taking it for a shakedown. It's like, Mr. Sulu, just, indulge yourself. But then it sort of picks up on this other plot of Carol Marcus. Did Carol Marcus turn up in the show, Will?
Nope.
No?
That was totally, that's how insignificant Kirk's like love interests were in the show, is we could just make up a new one.
But he's got a kid, like that's his son?
It's his son. Yeah, don't worry. He doesn't stick around for very long in the universe.
Okay.
Also not very important to the franchise.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, they
yeah.
don't even like really acknowledge it at all. Like, it's so obvious, but they don't really like lean into it that much.
Well, I mean, you can kind of, and I will give him credit. You do pick up from the context that it's like, all right, you asked me to give you a break, but that's my son, and it's, but it works. It does. It works. It's like, all right, son, Kirk's got a son, great. But it's the Genesis project. That's that cool sort of like the cool MacGuffin of this Star Trek is like, the Genesis project, and you get that cool initial animation, which is really, I like that. Yeah. It's cool. They use CGI, and then when they do it for real later, it looks different. It's like, again, it doesn't matter, but it's
I like the idea of that.
It's a good MacGuffin, and then
they should have used that in Interstellar. God,
yeah,
solved all these problems.
But for me, the thing, whenever anyone talks Wrath of Khan, the very first thing I think about is when I was watching it as a kid, because I cannot not think about those fucking worms going in Chekhov's ear.
Ricardo Montalban's titties.
Yeah.
I will say this movie isn't even in my top 5 sandworm movies. It goes Beetlejuice, Tremors.
Yeah,
that's fucking takes up the other 4. All the Tremors movies.
Sure, yeah. But dude, that was fucking crazy.
That was bit gross. I remember watching as a kid, and I still watch it, and I get all squirmy. And they do good. Like, it's pretty fun that they've built like a giant ear, and then they've got the thing going in it. And
that's cool. That's cool. Even the creature in like underneath the sand, I thought that was fun. Like but that's just it. Like the beauty of fun little practical puppets. That's so cool. I think like even in go ahead, sorry.
Well, kind of like what you were saying is that, you could see the budgetary limitations, but how many times have we talked about that can sometimes be a blessing because it forces you to get creative. It forces you to improvise or come out with an original way to do it. And this movie rips for me. It's great. It's great fun. It's like, it's dark. It's, it's a great villain. Ricardo Montalban is dialed up to 100 out of 10. He is just acting at maximum capacity. Every line delivery, it's just like, and I was reading it because he'd been doing the Love Boat or whatever for ages. And he said, I forgot. He had to watch the original episode like 4 times.
I thought you were saying he had to go back and watch The Naked Gun.
And get that performance down.
Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same performance, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. When he gets all Shakespearean by the end of it with busted up eye, and he's just like, I love it. I love this movie. It is so much fun to watch.
I just thought of the Tarantino like title card where revenge is a dish best served cold. It's this old Klingon proverb or something.
Yeah.
It made me think of that. I'm like, that's what this is from.
Yeah, such a funny like Tarantino callback to this.
I'd never put that together.
That killed me when I saw that in theaters. Like, I was like, that's so funny. Yeah, like it's his performance, and it's especially for like him and Kirk never being in the same room.
Yeah,
like they never act opposite each other, and yet it's like one of the most memorable like hero and villain like conflicts in like sci-fi movies.
And I do like. And I didn't really clock it until this one, but it's like, all right, because, if you're going to sit there and, you may have been on the internet once or twice, people like to nitpick and like point out sort of errors. But I really like how Khan's number one goes, sir, we've got off the planet.
Yeah, we don't need to do this anymore. We're good. Like,
yeah, we can just go anywhere. We can just fuck off.
Yeah,
and like, the universe is
and
our
he's like, fuck you, not Peter Weller.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't unsee it. I was like, is that Peter Weller?
That's a really good point.
I thought it was when I was a kid. I was like, that's RoboCop, right?
Hell yeah.
Wow. That's a good take. But
see, that's one of the beauties about this is, yeah.
But yeah, he just points out there's no point to this. What are we doing? And he goes, fuck that guy. We're gonna mess with that guy.
Yeah, he's literally looking at the script. He's like, "Boss, I don't know if you're aware, but we won the movie, so we could all go home early. Actually, like we're good."
Yeah. And
But,
so wait, do all those people have fucking space worms in their brain holes? That's why they're, like,
No, those are all his. They're
Previous
all
ones,
genetic superhuman from the '90s, and they were all kind of part of an uprising on Earth, and so those are just kind of like they're.
They were Khan's final solution.
Have you seen the original episode, right? From the original season?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So hang on a second, because I've suddenly had a random brain like aneurysm. But like
that's what I feel like I'm having.
Was the spaceship that they were in, did it look like a submarine in space?
The Botany Bay? Yeah. Yeah. It's it looked like a submarine.
Then I have seen the episode. But yes, okay, yeah. So yeah, it's like, so basically imagine, if you will, Red October is floating in space when they come across it. That's kind of
I will not imagine that.
I'm gonna give Walter Koenig, I love his Botany Bay. But we have to get out of here. Damn! I love his like, we've got to get out of here. Damn! It's
got to be said though, Chekhov should not recognize that ship. Chekhov is not in that episode. He wasn't even cast on the show when they made that episode. That he came along in season 2. That season 1. It's always been the thing that bothered me.
Chekhov wasn't in the first season.
No, he was not. He's not in any of the first season episodes.
Chekhov's Chekhov.
They literally brought him in.
You son of a bitch. Yeah. I think I said that during once watching the movies. I'm like, Chekhov's gun. Chekhov with a gun.
Yeah, literal Chekhov's gun.
I can't believe that's where Hitchcock got it from.
Yeah. He loved Star Trek.
He was a huge Trekkie, yeah.
But yeah, that's why Chekhov is in the show, is because George Takei was off doing a movie and they didn't have him for like a few weeks. So they were like, we need someone to say like Sulu's lines. So they hired a new guy, created a new character, and that's why Chekhov is there.
Nice.
I liked in the beginning of the film when it's him and Bones, like it's his birthday, they're celebrating, and he brings him the Romulan ale, which is basically blue Gatorade.
Yeah.
And he drinks like, he's like, huh?
Dope apartment, doesn't he?
It was so cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, is that on like Earth?
Yeah, it's in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I was trying to make the connection. Like, I think I was looking through all three of these movies. I think Spaceballs is the only one that's not really tied to Earth, like, or a state, right, for us to do. We're really reaching with this fucking episode.
It's in space.
It's in space,
but Interstellar and this
the United States is like, in space. Yeah. Come on, it works.
SS ship name.
Botany Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is the Enterprise like the only fucking ship they have? Like, come on.
I mean, for the first few movies, it might as well be, but you know,
I guess it would be weird if they had like the titanium
Brian,
Falcon.
If you want to get into how Starfleet operates,
I don't.
Yes, here we go. So, in the 22nd century,
cut to me just being a skeleton.
But then we were talking about the opening scene with DeForest Kelley.
In his apartment. I love that he's got like all the fucking tchotchkes on the wall, like all the ancient weapons he probably got from fighting predators.
It looks like he's got like, you know,
armor and pistols.
The original Enterprise, like the old like ship, you know, with the sails and stuff.
And
it's not a pad.
It's not a big apartment for a very like distinguished captain. Right.
Well, you see, money doesn't exist in the future, Ryan, and it's all about exploration. And we're not talking about a capitalistic society.
We're losing him. Also, it's not his horse ranch in Idaho. So
okay,
you know, this is his Starfleet.
Was it always like? Are they always stationed in San Francisco? Like
Starfleet is San Francisco based.
Yeah, you wouldn't put that in Florida. Fuck that.
No, that's the one part of the world that's still apocalyptic is Florida.
Was this Kirstie Alley's first feature debut?
I think it was a big breakout to the fact that the reason she's not in the next one is because she blew up in Cheers. This movie kind of put her out there. Yeah. So another actress comes and plays Sarvik in 3, which it's fine.
And I was curious. I probably already know the answer to this question, but he kept referring to her as Mr. Saavik. Like
it was supposed to be a guy, like it was written as like a younger Vulcan because they were like, well, we're killing Spock, so we need a Vulcan, so we're going to get a guy.
And
And
they
at
just didn't change
some
it.
point, they decided they were going to cast Kirstie Alley, and they're like, let's not change it.
I
It's,
just
But they
thought it
kind
was
of
from like a hierarchical, like
they
on the
yeah, I think you're
bridge
right.
they've
standpoint.
kept it since, yeah. Like in Star Trek, they keep like they don't change the gendering.
It wouldn't
like,
be
they still say
Mrs. Sulu.
right. Yeah, no. So they still keep that.
Got it.
This movie established that, and they kept it going from that point on.
Interesting. She was great.
Yeah.
So much so that I think I'd said, I'm like, I feel like she's gonna do like a bit of a double cross, but you corrected me, and that was that was Kim Cattrall, you said? For
Kim
Mannequin?
Cattrall, yeah. Yeah.
In 6.
In Mannequin.
Yeah.
In there
She, as Mannequin.
in sections.
Yeah.
That's why Hollywood showed up. Damn.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I should watch Mannequin.
But then the bit where, I think the reason that we kind of brought this to the table,
You
as
could have
well
picked
was
any fucking Star Trek.
well,
Excuse me.
because we had been just talking Hunt for Red October,
True.
Mhm.
and you had yourself going, "What Star Trek's what submarines in space?" And we're like,
That's the way you kind of. I
Yes!
think you at one point had mentioned that to me one drunken night at your house at like 4 a.m. You're like, "Hey, you want to watch the Star Trek from the very beginning? I have all the torrents still going." No.
Still downloading.
Yeah. But yeah, we talked about like space. It's basically space submarines, and I get that.
Mhm.
especially when we get to that final scene. So I kind of like I like how they do it because Kirk gets kind of caught with his pants down.
And my only argument is like, I guess a submarine effectively works the same ways, but how many different like photons can they have? It's mechanically the same. It's manipulating the shield. But it's like, it doesn't strike me as like a chess match. It's basically, oh no, our lasers are
Where's
down.
your
Our
degree
shield
from
is
Starfleet Academy?
Well, so like in this case, like
it's my least favorite part is the space battles. Like I love all the like which I normally hate is the bureaucracy and
I
stuff.
love the bureaucracy. I can't stand the space. I'm like, what the fuck?
the space battles.
The space part of Star
Knock
Trek.
off all this action.
Yeah.
Can they get back to a boardroom, please?
Yeah.
But give me like a Parks and Rec or a Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but on like a spaceship.
Well,
is that
then
what
watch
Lower Decks is?
you
Is
like.
that what that is? Okay. But that's a
Lower Decks
cartoon,
is-
right?
Yeah. No, Will. It's not. Lower Decks is some of the best Star Trek I've ever seen. I love it.
Oh wait, I forgot. I met Tawny Newson in person.
I've done it. I've made you two fight each other
I love,
over Star
I love
Trek.
Lower Decks. Yeah.
Oh, no, Lower Decks. Lower Decks is it's a place that every joke comes from love. They love the show, but they also love to make fun of it, and it's honestly
That's cool.
great. And it's also got one of the best crossover episodes I've ever seen when it crossed over with Strange New Worlds.
I do like that one a lot. That one's really good.
Brilliant.
I don't know. Is that another cartoon?
Back to Wrath of Khan. Come on, we keep getting off.
Sorry. It's working.
But like so it sort of it builds like so. Khan is a great counter to Kirk. Kirk gets caught with his pants down, but immediately he returns fire by being like, "All right, we've got a plan. We've got a smart." And it's got this great sort of tit for tat that kind of comes down to that great sort of like the actual submarine moment where they go into the nebula. There are no view screens. Suddenly, it's just like, where are they? It's in the same way that we're like going, even just thinking about submarine warfare is wild because you're just playing chess in the dark in a massive 1,000-foot long thing.
It's blind battleship. Yeah, right.
And it's like that whole sort of end scene looks good, looks great. The nebula looks good. It sets up this whole situation. And the whole thing about, I like, because you start off with the Kobayashi Maru and you've got Kirk being a bit, but the honest part of it is when we get to the end of the movie is Kirk's never really had to face death. He's always buckled his swash out of every situation. He's never, had this go wrong. And you're at that point where it's like, it's Scotty, we need warp in 3 minutes or we're all dead. He's like, all right, well.
Let me fiddle around on this device. Yeah.
But like the way that Kirk is sitting there, like, everyone's waiting to die. Suddenly they get the power back, but it sets up the two most emotional moments in the history of Star Trek, which is Kirk and Spock saying goodbye to each other, and then Kirk at the funeral. And I like, as much as Will like pastiche that at the beginning of the show, I think that is the best 10 seconds of William Shatner acting I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then followed up with
breaking, saying human is
Yeah.
All right.
For me-
Yeah, it has this beautiful moment followed up by then him playing the bagpipe and then launching him right out of the fucking ship. I was like,
yeeting
I know
him.
this is supposed to be like a really heartfelt, like special moment, but this is a little silly because it's out of nowhere. Like the bagpipe is just like,
his name is
I
Scotty.
understand that.
Yeah.
I understand. I get the logic behind it, but it's like it's a very specific instrument to hear in a spaceship.
Yeah, no, I will agree to some extent because I hate bagpipes. I hate the sound of bagpipes. So just so everybody knows, at my funeral, if you play bagpipes, I will come out of the grave and strangle you.
But Will is going to be buried in a bagpipe.
My nightmare.
Tune in the bagpipe flop.
Yeah, I love Shatner's acting in that scene. I will say, I think the only time he eclipses it is in Star Trek 3 when he is listening in and they kill his son and he's told about it. And because that moment's always a little bit more powerful for me because that's when Kirk falls out of his chair and like just collapses.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a little bit more powerful when like Kirk is like always been the captain, always been like, you know, I'm in charge. When he actually like physically loses control and just crumbles out of his chair from like heartbreak is a little bit too much. I'm like, that's pretty intense, but it's okay. He blows up every Klingon after that. he kind of goes on a rampage.
I mean, that's what they're talking about in 6.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when he's talking, I don't think I can ever forgive them, you know, for what they've done. Oh my God, we've done it again. Can we talk about the second one?
Right. This is number two. I mean, everybody like really showed up to like play their roles in this movie, and everybody's like so comfortable playing those characters by this point. Pretty much everyone's got a moment to shine.
We don't get enough of her.
Yeah, we never do. Unfortunately, it's sadly it's not till the new show, like with younger Uhura, that we get like really enough time with her. That kind of sucks, but I still think for the most part it's a pretty good balance. Scotty's got a lot to do. Which in the version you guys saw, did they mention that it's his nephew is the young cadet who's dies?
See, that's the thing. It didn't, but I'm
okay.
like, but it's his nephew, and I'm like, did I miss something? Is it just context? But does he just mention it after he dies? Because I had the same thing while going.
It's in the director's cut.
Is it the guy that's down below when they're first attacked? And she goes haywire and like
he's in the sick bay dying, and he's the one who like reaches up with his bloody hand and he grabs Kirk and he's like, "Is the word given?"
Or whatever it was.
Yeah. And Bones is like, "Well, I sat here and looked at him. That's the best I could do," and puts the baked potato cover over him, and it's like, "Well, sorry, Scotty, he's gone."
Back from whence you came. He just launches out of the fucking tube.
Shoot him out on a torpedo. What? Get the bagpipes quick.
Yeah.
They really like do. There's a lot of like space bodies just floating around. They did in Starship Troopers. Like that's a whole thing.
Yeah. but yeah, I think the performances in this movie are pretty much all like really, really good.
And
so
I think it's why it's regarded by pretty much every Star Trek fan as the best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
like, this is the best.
This is the best Star Trek, depending on who you ask. Because I like the first J.J. Abrams reboot, the Kelvin timeline one.
I do too.
Well played. I've also got a big soft spot for Episode 6, the Undiscovered Country. I think that is a solid picture. But this one it's just the right amount of swashes being buckled, and just the right amount of emotion, and just the right amount of, you know, like I said, we know Spock's coming back. I'm still sad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, so he dies. They launch him out.
Yes, what do they launch him onto?
The Genesis planet. Yeah.
Everything, like they're talking about, oh, this thing's, you know, they talked about entire ecosystems developing very, very quickly. And like, you know, so they've launched a dead body onto a Genesis planet. So what's it going to do? It's going to, you know,
so when
it's
he
not
comes,
like they did it deliberately.
When he comes back, is he just normal? Or does he have to like relearn everything? Does he not know them?
So what happens is
let's talk about the next 3 movies.
God.
remember when he knocks out McCoy and then he puts his like hand on his face and kind of like tickles him. He put his Katra, his soul, into McCoy. So the whole third movie is McCoy's got Spock's soul rattling around in his head, which leads to my favorite McCoy line of all time, when Kirk tells him, he's like, by the way, Spock's like in your head. Like that's where his soul is. McCoy has the line where he's like, "That son of a bitch. This is his revenge for all those arguments he lost."
I love, yeah,
So,
they're
that's so funny.
Their dynamic together too is very charming. Like I love the like
Spock and Bones just
the
being
playful
like-
rivalry. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. And there's so much
Yeah.
so like I think what's his name? Zachary
Quino.
yeah, and the new ones like he just doesn't have that. I don't know. His Spock to me just felt very off compared to. I mean, listen, Leonard Nimoy is one of the most iconic characters ever
created.
Yeah, but like
50 years.
he just comes off
Yeah.
as like a smarmy prick, whereas like I don't
It's
know,
tough.
Nimoy's
It's
just
tough because
definitely-
I think he looks a lot like Nimoy,
sure.
but Ethan Peck, who plays him on the show, acts more like Nimoy.
Mhm.
Like the actor on the TV show right now, like nails it. And
So
it's
there's
phenomenal.
a current next generation,
No, so it's Strange New World. So okay, I'm going to give you very
and
very
that's
quick-
live action.
Yes, the very, very first episode of Star Trek, the original series, has a Captain Pike. But then he becomes Captain Kirk in the second one, as Shatner is then cast as him. So what this show, Strange New Worlds, is the adventures of Captain Pike with most of the crew from the...
Is it like a what if scenario?
It's
Well,
a prequel.
No, it's just he existed before.
Oh.
And then he's got his own canon, which is Pike gets completely messed up and ends up as like a melted, like... You know,
he gets in a beat chair. He can't talk. You know how it is.
Yeah, so... But yeah, so
kind of
the
how
show...
I feel right now.
So Strange New World is kind of like, it's kind of gone back to the original series vibe. It's a lot of fun. You've got characters that we do know and
It's
characters
very
that,
kitschy, like
oh, it's fun. It's just fun. It's
the
what
best
Star
of the
Trek's
current.
supposed to be.
Yeah, it's the best of the current crop of shows, like for sure. But it's very much like modeled after the original show, but with modern writing and sensibilities and stuff.
And it looks
I
great.
love it.
It
Yeah.
looks like J.J. Abrams level Star Trek, but like in a TV show.
see, I didn't
But
like
Kirk's a character now. Kirk's in the show.
Yeah.
who's playing him? William Shatner.
No, he's from the Vampire Diaries. I forget the actors. Paul
Yeah, okay.
Wesley, I think is his name. He does great. He does great. All the actors on the show are fantastic.
When
But,
I say on the text thread, I'm like, what happens in the third one? Is it Khan's son, Scott?
Yes, I would have actually. That's who Benedict Cumberbatch is playing.
It was the original
Scott
casting was
Conn.
James Caan. Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, I mean, I kept thinking too, like, listen, you can't. Ricardo Montalban is like irreplaceable as this character. But I kept thinking, I'm like, I can see Sean Connery. Like, I kept looking now, rethinking of the Hunt for Red
Sean
October.
Connery.
Yeah, I kept thinking of like the Hunt for Red October, but like as a Star Trek. Like, I mean, it basically is the same thing, just one's
Pretty much, yeah.
down in the water and one's up in the stars.
It is. That's
Yeah.
like I've always said. I think that's why I like submarine movies, and that's why I like Star Trek movies.
That makes sense now. I get it.
Mhm.
That's why I like Sequest as well. That TV show that was really good for one season.
I've
Sequest.
been meaning
Jonathan
to
Jonathan
rewatch that.
Brandis show? Sequest DSB?
It was the guy from
Roy Scheider is the star.
Roy Scheider as the captain.
I
and
think
then
Jonathan
it's like-
Brandis was on that show.
I can't remember.
Late. Jonathan.
Is he the dolphin? I can't. What's the dolphin's name?
No, you're thinking of Johnny
That's
Mnemonic.
Johnny Mnemonic.
That's
right.
I hate these fucking dolphins.
Well, look, this week it was a nice random week. We've been wanting to do it. It's been fun to finally get Ryan to talk about Star Trek, which is honestly why I chose this as a special. It's like, because I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
It was fun to bring Interstellar, and I really liked your guys' take on it. And I think, I think there's this interesting time going on right now with the reassessment of Christopher Nolan movies and looking at the way things are moving forward and looking back. And then, of course, it was really fun to also just have that sort of nostalgic trip, whether it be based in trauma like Will or based in humor like Ryan, of watching Spaceballs. But I thought it was a real, like, considering we went space, we did pick from 3 very, very different trees.
I think
the movies
too,
could not be more different.
yeah, and looking back now, I kept thinking like, I love like parodies of Star Trek. Like we mentioned Galaxy Quest. I love the USS Callister episode of Black Mirror. Like I
Yes.
love the idea of it. I've just never connected with the source material for some reason.
You know, one thing I really like about the Star Trek fandom and Star Trek universe is many people regard Galaxy Quest as the third best Star Trek movie. Like everyone's like, no, that's a great, that's awesome. That's everything.
Yeah,
we like
It's
about
so
pretty much-
meta. Like I love that. And it
Yeah,
looks great. And
I love Patrick Stewart's story about seeing Galaxy Quest, which is everyone in Next Generation had seen it, and all of them like went to him and they're like, Patrick, you've got to see this movie. And he was like, fine. And so he's said he like got a baseball cap on, like sunglasses, went to a theater, sat way in the back, and he said he laughed harder than he's like ever laughed at any movie.
Love
Like,
the idea of like him and Ian McKellen going for a date night to see
yeah,
Galaxy
to see
Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
That's kind of cute. I'm into
Yeah.
that.
they are the best bromance,
Yeah.
best bromance out there. So yeah, no, very quickly then, like so. You know, you've touched on it like there with Galaxy Quest. What are some of the other movies that you guys maybe circled about, you know, going into space? I don't think any of us even for a second thought about a Star Wars movie. I think we were kind of like going, and I was considering 2001, you know, just because why the fuck not? You know, that's why I think I landed on Interstellar, the other version of 2001 that's a little bit, you know, more sort of like explosive.
It's so funny. Like the track record of like space movies is wild. Like we were gonna go like any of the Alien movies, or we mentioned Event Horizon. I had this like flashback specific memory. Like you get this memory when it's like two movies that come out that are very like similar, like your Deep Impact Asteroid, things like that. I distinctly remember Mission to Mars and Val Kilmer's Red Planet.
Yeah.
Very different
Yes.
films, but I remember like the time when it was like we were really fucking into Mars. Like in the 90s, like Mars is the shit. Let's make a bunch of Mars movies. And
Well, of course, John Carpenter made the best one with Ghost of Mars. Obviously, undisputed, the best Mars movie.
Yeah.
But then there's also like Total Recall.
Yeah.
We could have sort of messed with that a little bit. There's
I don't think I think Total Recall, I mean, yes, it takes place on another planet, but it doesn't like
it's not a space movie.
that's a space movie, yeah. Like it takes place on a ship or something. Like when I hear space, that's kind of what I think.
Have you ever seen the Ice Pirates?
No.
I saw that movie with my brother when I was younger, and we were maybe 10, 8, 9, 10. And I just remember it being so funny. Like, and I've never seen it again, but I still remember it being one of the hardest I've ever laughed was the Ice Pirates. There's a bit where I remember him being tied down and then they're going to chop his dick off because there's like a machine to come and like, you know. And then there's a bit later on where something's going on with time as well. And the other guy, one of the characters comes out and so suddenly time's accelerated. So he has this massive afro and stuff like that. It's along the same lines as Spaceballs. It's like, it's just...
Well, by the way, it's not a comedy either. It's just a Roger Corman space movie that is trying to be funny. But it's not actually like, it's like a Battle Beyond the Stars, where Roger Corman's like, Star Wars is huge, put out 9 movies that are similar.
I think for retribution for making me watch Star Trek 2, the Wraith of Khan, I was going to pick so mad it wasn't a Wraith movie. I was going to pick Rocket Man. Piss you off.
The only thing I remember about Rocket Man is him farting in the space, and it goes into everyone else's spacesuits too because they're all tethered.
William Forsythe, like who's the right? He's dropping like a hammer on it. I remember really liking that.
I thought it was funny too.
Like, Harlan Williams was like coming off hot of like Half Baked, I think. So he was just a kind of star in that, and I just remember Rocket Man being a very funny film.
I am another one I almost went with, and I was very tempted, but The Last Starfighter. You ever seen that one? I haven't seen. I've seen that as a kid. I loved it. I think I've seen it once in the last 35 years. I'd love to go back and watch it because, like,
that's Jeff Bridges, right?
No, that's Tron, man. Like the Last Starfighter is a kid that's just playing like a stand-up arcade game, and he's really good at it. And then suddenly they go, "Cool, you can come and now fight in space," and it's like everything you wanted as a kid. Like,
Gotcha.
It's literally like every kid's dream is you're so good at video games that it's like, oh yeah, you could actually like win a war in space.
Come save the galaxy.
That's just like the movie Gran Turismo.
It literally, when the Gran Turismo trailer came out, I'm like, so it's Last Starfighter? Like that's the plot they're going. Okay.
Hey, one, did you watch Gran Turismo? Because I've watched that movie like 3 times. It does not suck. But
I'm not saying that. I just
it's
thought saw the
directed by
trailer.
fucking Neil.
Yeah, that's the thing is like
Yeah.
the only way he was ever going to make a movie was to do that. Like we got robbed of everything he could have possibly done, and we
Yeah.
got Gran fucking Turismo.
But it is actually based off a true story because I remember.
I know that. Yeah, I remember seeing the ESPN. It's fucking horrific, but Jesus Christ.
Is Diane Ward in Gran Turismo? Like, are they in that movie?
They play the car. Yeah.
Yeah. The weird whatever South African
from Chappie, right?
From Chappie, yeah. Yeah, they're in it, right? Yeah.
Are they in Gran Turismo? I don't think so.
It's David Harbour. All right, so look, in this particular case,
a lot of space movies. There's a lot of them.
A lot of space movies. But here at the United States Movie Podcast, we do have to crown a champion. In this case, you know, why is it Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
Pretty much.
See, I for me, again, just trying to tie it back into the United States of it all. I just can't even believe those words came out of my mouth. But I think it's got to be, for me, I think it's got to be Interstellar, because at the core of it, the whole purpose of the mission is to save our planet from starvation, famine, whatever.
Actually, the entire point of the movie is taking humanity off the planet and abandoning it.
All right,
and
well,
not solving any of the
Spaceballs it is.
Well, you know what? In this particular case, it does not really matter. This was just a fun choice to just jump up into space. There is no right, there is no wrong. I think what I like about this is that all three of us didn't agree on all three movies. Like, they're all movies that we like, oh, this
I think
so good.
we can all agree only one of them has had a fucking earworm of a song stuck in my head all week, and it's fucking Spaceballs.
Right, but Wrath of Khan had an actual earworm, so
there you go.
Boo.
It keeps on winning.
Yeah. Fuck you. I'm watching Tremors.
But the thing is, honestly, I want to watch Tremors so bad. The thing is that, as we've seen, like, you know, even when we get into the also runs, quite honestly, anybody could start a podcast just about space movies. It's an incredible genre. There are so many, like I said, the horror genre, the comedy genre, the epic space opera genre. I actually will. I want to come back and do this again next season after we've done our next road trip. I'd like to come back and do another special, because I think there's some really, really incredible movies that we could get into. But yeah, in this case, everyone can give themselves a crown, because I'm gonna give it to Star Trek 2, but we can give it to Interstellar, we can give it to Spaceballs, whatever you like. In this case, everybody's right, everybody's wrong. It's like a utopian society where everybody serves in space and there's no money and capitalism. Oh, it's Star Trek!
Yeah!
Ryan is just gonna quit this show right now. Though, I tell you what, Ryan, I'm about to cheer you up, because this next week we are going to take a bye week. We're going to
thank God.
So that Will and I can watch all of the Star Treks.
Right.
But yeah, no, we're going to take a break for the next weekend. So we're going to do a re-release of one of our episodes from season 1, for maybe one of the ones you missed from the beginning of the show. But when we return, this is one that I know Ryan and Will have been very excited about. And I've heard some of the plans that they may have for this particular one. But we're going to go to something very American. It's maybe the most Americana thing of the 80s when we were younger. We are going to try and do the best shopping mall movie. We're going to the mall, ladies and gentlemen, a place that died, you know, when the internet was invented. But back in the day, it's where where everything happened. And I'm intrigued to see what everything we can find happening in a mall, because there are some really strange, wacky movies out there.
Yes, I'm super stoked. For the Gen Alpha out there, malls were like the internet, but you could go to it, and there was a food court and everything. It's gonna blow your minds. Like,
it's like Amazon but real.
Yeah.
So next time around, guys, so put your thinking caps on. When we return after a 1-week break, we will be doing the shopping mall special. That one, like I said, there's one movie that I've heard Ryan and Will mention. I've only ever heard of it. I've never seen it, and I'm very, very excited about the prospect of seeing this particular movie. So make sure you tune in to find out what we do next time. Don't forget, as always, you can find Me as Ollie Pettigrew on Facebook, or you can find me as That Englishman in Texas, where I'm often talking about Texas. But on Mondays, I'm always talking movies, as it's the day we drop our podcast. Will, he loves to talk about movies, especially as Entitled Millennial on TikTok, where he's got his wall of movies and Blu-rays, where he likes to introduce movies that you might be interested in. Ryan, if you like posters, if you like movie sort of collectibles,
You hate
Ryan's
Star
the
Trek. We can hang
Trust me, Ryan has some of the best reimagined posters out there. He's a fantastic designer, and you can find all his designs as Rhino Digital, RYNO Digital. You can find him on Etsy, you can find him on Threadless and things like that. Of course, as well, if you are watching us on YouTube and you aren't subscribed to us, do us a favor and hit that little subscribe button, even hit that bell to maybe get notifications. Drop a comment as well, get involved in the conversation. Tell Ryan how wrong he is about Star Trek. That's what we want to do. Tell Will how wrong he is about Twister, and just tell me how right I am about basically everything that I'm saying. You can, of course, find us on our Facebook page, the United States of Movie. We've got a Reddit as well. But really, just come in, join the conversation. We really enjoy doing this show, and we really do enjoy it when other people come out and reach out to us about the show as well. So until next time, when we head to the mall, from me, Ollie, from Ryan, and from Will, thanks, as always, for joining us for this episode of the United States of Movie Podcast. Live long and prosper.